Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto Rinnegan Highschool of the Dead. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Nuke Fox 19 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1, Dying World. Down in a dark alley lied an unconscious blonde man. He looked to be in his teens, mostly around 17. He has long spiky blonde hair that slightly covered his eyes. He has 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. He wore an orange and black jacket, which was unzipped to show that he wore a black shirt underneath it. He also wore orange pants and black sandals. The blonde's eyes opened to reveal that they were purple-colored and that they had a ripple-like pattern. The blonde sat up and looked around to see blood everywhere, along with dead bodies lying around. Getting back up to his feet, he looked around once again. His eyes were narrowed to show that his face shows a bored expression. Where the hell am I? The blonde thought. He walked out of the alley to see several vehicles crashed and on fire. Looking to his left, he saw a school board that said, Fujimi Academy. He saw that the gates were forced open, and as his curiosity caught the best of him, he walked towards the school. A group of people, 2 males and 4 females, were running through the halls throughout the school. One of the students was carrying a metal bat. This student's a boy at the age of 17 with an average height and build. He has brown eyes and spiky black hair. He wore the black school uniform with a red t-shirt underneath. His name's Takashi Komuro. Another student was carrying a wooden sword. Her name's Siko Byasujima, age 18. She has long, straight purple hair with a triangular fringe at the front that barely touched the ridge of her nose. She also had blue eyes and her lips were shiny and pink like sakura blossoms. The next girl was carrying a mop handle. She has long, light brownish hair with bangs and 2 strands sticking out above the rest of her hair. She had reddish eyes and a slender figure with ample breasts. Her name's Rei Miyamoto, age 17. The third girl has long pink hair, which she mostly keeps in 2 ponytails on either of her head. Her hair also has 2 thin, long bangs at the sides, 2 thin strands of hair over the left side of her forehead, and a spiky larger portion of hair covering the left side of her forehead. She has fierce orange eyes and furrowed eyebrows. Her name's Saya Takagi, age 16. Next was the only adult of the group, a tall blonde woman that was carrying a bag full of medical supplies with waist-length hair and hazel eyes along with ridiculous curves. She was wearing a white dress shirt and brown skirt that was ripped at the sides. Her name Shizuka Marikawa, age 27. The last one of the group was carrying a nail gun. He was a slightly short and chubby boy with shoulder-length dark hair and bangs reaching down from the side of his temples stretching outwards and obscuring the sides of his face. And of course he was wearing the standard male student uniform of his school. His name's Kota Hirano, age 16. They all came to a stop and got up against the wall. Takashi peeked around the corner to see a small group of the dead just roaming around. He turned back to the group and whispered, Okay, I'm going to throw something that'll draw their attention so that we can get out of here. He looked at the nurse. You have the keys, right? The busted nurse nodded. Okay. Takashi whispered, as he picked up a shoe that was lying nearby and threw it back from where they came from, which ended up hitting a locker. The dead all picked up the sound and walked towards the source of the sound. Takashi beckoned the group, as they all ran out the doors. Once they all got outside, they all came to a sudden halt. They froze and could not believe what they were seeing. The whole parking lot was overflooded with several of them. Takashi shook it off. We need to get to that bus. The bus he referred to was not too far from them, but it was blocked by a lot of them. Come on! Takashi shouted, as he and the others all ran towards the bus. Takashi, Siko, and Rei managed to make a path by knocking down any that stood in their way. Kota, on the other hand, was smiling like a madman while he shot any of them from a distance. It wasn't long till they made it to the bus. Miss Shizuka, the keys, Takashi called out. All right, she replied, as she opened the door and got in, along with the others except for Takashi and Siko. The 2 decided to stay out to buy some time for the nurse to get everything ready. Takashi kicked one of the dead back and swung at another one against the head. He spun around to face the one he kicked and swung the bat down on the top of its head. The bus powered on, which gave them the word that they were ready to get out of here. Takashi, they're ready? Let's go, Siko said, as she whacked her wooden sword across the head of one of them. You go, ladies first, he said. Siko smiled slightly and quickly got on the bus, followed by Takashi. Wait for us. Takashi looked out the door to see a group of people running towards them. Who's that? Takashi asked. That's Mr. Shido, the teacher of Class 3A, Siko answered. Rei's eyes widened. Shido, she said quietly. We can go now, Shizuka announced. Wait just a bit longer, Takashi replied. Rei quickly looked at Takashi. They're in front of us. Any more and we won't be able to drive through here, Shizuka said. Just run them down, Takashi stated. Saya folded her arms across her chest. If any more crowd around in front of the bus, and we were to run them over, it might just flip the bus. Saya mentioned. Takashi gritted his teeth and made his way to the exit. However, Rei quickly grabbed his arm. We don't have to save him, she said. Takashi stepped out and looked at Rei. Jesus. What do you mean we don't have to save him? We don't have to help him. He deserves to die, Rei shouted. They're alive and no one deserves to die. Takashi barked back and turned back around to look outside. However, he looked at a different area and saw a blonde boy around his age. Who's that? Everyone looked at what Takashi was looking at. I don't know. I haven't seen anyone wearing clothes like those around the school, Siko answered. The blonde watched the group of people running to the bus. Then he realized that two of them were behind. One, which looked like the leader to him, was standing and looking down at an injured student. Then, the leader of that group kicked down at the student's face and left him, as he made his way to the bus. The blonde kept that same bored look on his face, as he looked at the student that was left behind and saw that a few of the dead were closing in on him. He slid a metal rod through his jacket's sleeve and instantly vanished. The people at the bus were completely shocked. What the hell? Takashi asked. No one had a clue what to say. Let's go, we need to get out of here, Shido called out. Takashi shook his head. Not yet. They looked at the defenseless student, but then they saw the blonde appear right next to his side. The blonde grit his teeth and hefted the boy up along his shoulders. He could literally smell the breath rolling off the dead students at the close of a distance. The dead lunged at the blonde, but he ended up stabbing the rod through the head of one. The others grabbed onto the blonde. Shinra Tensei. He muttered quietly. Only the boy on his shoulders would have effectively heard it. It was then that the 6 creatures that had come to surround the two were viciously blown back. This wasn't the please move from the doorway Shinra Tensei, as he liked to call it, such as the one he used earlier against the abomination in the school. This was a full-fledged, bone-crushing, organ-melting forceful push that was used for combat. The creatures rocketed off in all directions, the amount of force shown to all of the onlookers as over in the bus. One of the monsters had propelled right into the school. One of them ended up slamming hard against the constructed walls, impacting with enough force to make an actual crater in it. Another creature blew off in another direction, rocketing at the fence before springboarding face first, crashing into the cement. What on earth was that? Rei asked. Shido and his group witnessed of what happened, and even Shido himself was lost for words. They all kept their eyes on the blonde, but then he vanished once again and ended up reappearing before their very eyes. The blonde stood outside the bus, while Takashi quickly helped the injured student in the bus. He sat him down in the seat behind Shizuka and looked down to see the blonde just standing there. Get in. The blonde looked behind him to see several of them coming and decided to get in the bus. Once he stepped in, the doors shut, while Shizuka stared at the horde in front of them. They're not human anymore, she said to herself, and finally pushed down on the pedal as she began to run them over. Naruto stood at the front of the bus and looked at everyone, but then his eyes came to a stop on the man that tried to kill one of the students. He walked towards him slowly, while Takashi and his group, except for Shizuka, along with the injured student that was saved by the blonde, watched him. Shido sat in his seat and had fear showing in his eyes. The blonde continued to make his way to him, but then a student from the other group got up from his seat and stood in front of the blonde. This student has brown and yellow hair, wears the male Fujimi High School uniform, and unlike the other students, he wears slippers instead of regular shoes. Under his uniform he wears a blue high-collar sweater that is unbuttoned slightly. His name's Tsunoda, age 17, go sit down, he yelled. The blonde, as usual, kept that bored look on his face and didn't say a word. I said go sit D. The blonde grabbed the student by the face and lifted him up off his feet, as he looked up at him. Some of the people gasped and were completely surprised about this boy's strength. The way he simply lifted Tsunoda up with one hand by the face was not normal by any other student. He didn't say anything and instead, he simply tossed him back to his seat and walked up to Shido. The teacher was starting to shake in fear, as the blonde stopped right next to him. He looked closely at him to realize how long his hair was, which managed to cover his eyes slightly. However, Shido managed to see his strange eyes. Who are you? And what are you? He stuttered. The blonde grabbed the collar of the teacher's shirt and lifted him out of his seat. Shido grabbed hold of the blonde's wrist and struggled to get free, but the blonde's grasp was too strong. If you ever tried to leave anyone behind again, I'll kill you, the blonde stated. Shido's eye widened, but was placed back in his seat roughly. The blonde turned back to see that all eyes, except Shizuka's, were on him. My name's Naruto Namikaze. That's all you need to know, the blonde said, as he walked back to the front of the bus and sat down next to the student he saved. Shido saw that all eyes were on him now. Everyone, even his own group, was disgusted with him leaving a poor student behind. Shido's group consisted of 9 people, 6 males and 3 females. Tsunoda, Shido himself, and Kaji as well, but who knows if Kaji wants anything to do with him anymore. Kawamoto, age 16, is one of the girls from Shido's group. She's a red-headed girl with golden brown eyes. She has only been seen wearing the female uniform of Fujimi Academy. Under her uniform, she wore a pink tank top. Taneuchi, age 16, is another girl from Shido's group. She has magenta-colored hair and blue eyes covered by a pair of glasses. She has always been seen wearing the female sailor uniform of Fujimi Academy. Miura, age 17, is a male student from Shido's group. He has messy brown hair as well as eyes of the same color. Under his Gakuren jacket, he wears a red-orange shirt. Yamada, age 18, wears a long white-sleeved shirt. He has short black hair and light brown eyes. Kurakami, age 17, has long black hair that grows over his eyes. He does not wear the black uniform jacket over a long-sleeved white shirt. Unlike most students with these shirts, he wears his untucked. Yukimiku, age 18, has short light orange hair and uses a hairband to keep her hair back. She also wears the female uniform of Fujimi Academy. She was known to be the sexiest student throughout the school. Naruto grabbed the medical bag that was sitting on the ground and opened it. "What's your name?" Naruto asked. The boy replied with a stiff lip, "Kaji Saito." He answered in a deal of pain. Siko was sitting on the opposite side of the bus from Naruto, and a couple seats back. She watched him and admired his work. "Busujima-san, I'm assuming you're the leader of your group." Siko turned around and looked up to see Shido asking her. She also noticed that Shido was keeping a close eye on Naruto at the same time. "No. We just work together." "That's no good. Every group needs a leader in order to survive," he replied. Rei tightly grabbed Takashi's arm and glared at him. "You'll regret saving him," she whispered. "It's like I said. It's only going to be dangerous if we keep going. What if we run out of gas in the middle of nowhere? What are we going to do then? Why don't we find a safe place?" Tsunoda shouted, as he stood in the aisle. Kurakami nodded. "I agree with Tsunoda. We should just find a safe place with food and drinks to keep us alive for a few days and barricade ourselves inside." The bus came to a screeching halt and nearly threw Tsunoda off his feet, but he held onto a chair to hold his ground. "That's enough. I can't focus on driving with all of this commotion," Shizuka shouted. "Yeah, whatever," Tsunoda said. Naruto examined the 2 hair-colored teen and saw that this guy was on the verge of a mental breakdown. "Tell me, what is it you want to do then?" Siko asked the teen. Tsunoda gritted his teeth. "I just can't." He then pointed at Komuro. "I just can't stand him." Komuro got out of his seat. "What did I ever do or say to you?" Tsunoda lost it. "You bastard." He charged at the teen. The scene before the blonde started to remind him of an old friend of his. However, it was over when Rei got up and hit him hard in the stomach with the mop handle. "Asshole," she muttered. Clapping drew everyone's attention, as they all saw Mr. Shido now standing. "Bravo!" he began. "That was outstanding teamwork, Komuro-kun and Miyamoto-san. However, at any rate, a conflict such as this only serves to prove my point." He grinned as he leaned forward to the 2 shorter teens. "We need a leader." "Oh? So we've only got one nominee?" Saya asked. The teacher looked at the young girl. "I'm a teacher, Miss Takagi. And you are all my students." Shido looked at Naruto and the nurse. "Except for your nurse, and him," he said. "So, that alone makes it very clear who's more qualified. I'll make sure we all survive." Naruto gave the man some props since he did have some deal of charisma. However, he knew that this man was dangerous. He knew that if it came down to a situation similar to him and Kaji back at the school, that he would kill whoever was in his way. Shido's group stood up and clapped at his pointless speech. "I suppose that it's decided that I'm the leader from now on, by majority vote." Rei was just about to get up and leave, but before she did, she watched as Naruto got up. The blonde held his arm up in front. "Bansho Tenin," he whispered, as Shido came flying towards the blonde. Everyone went wide-eyed seeing more of the blonde. Naruto caught him by the neck and slid another metal rod from his sleeve. "If anyone should be leader here, it's defiantly not going to be you," he said in a cold tone. Shido struggled once again in the blonde's grasp. Seeing that Naruto got his statement through, he thought that was enough and simply tossed him back to the back of the bus. Siko for once showed the slightest of fear in her eyes. Just what is he? Where did he come from?" Takashi began to wonder. Kota, on the other hand, was in fact smiling. "He's like some badass from some manga." "I want Naruto as my leader," Kaji announced. The blonde looked at the student he had saved. "I also want Naruto as our leader," Kota said. Before anyone else could say anything, Naruto shook his head. "I'm afraid I cannot lead you all." Kota stood up. "Why not?" Naruto couldn't come up with an answer, and he didn't want to tell them exactly why. "I vote for him," The blonde pointed at Takashi. Hey, why won't you want to be the leader? Saya asked. Yeah, the way you saved Kaji, and how you easily took care of those dead students. You should take up on the position, Takashi said. Komuro's right, Siko mentioned. Naruto just stood there, while everyone started to say things about him and how he fits being the leader. It was too much for him, as his head started to ache. He placed a hand on his head, as his head began to get worse due to memories of him being back in his world came to him. So, who's going to lead our group? Ambushing Kabuto isn't going to be easy, Sai said. Tsunade sat at her desk, as she looked at Sai, Sakura, and Kiba. I have already decided who's going to lead. Right when she said that, the door opened to show Naruto wearing an ANBU outfit. Naruto? Why didn't I think of that sooner? Kiba asked himself. Naruto here will lead you, but please do remember, you four are to capture Kabuto alive and bring him back so we can get more information about Madara out of him. This is an S-ranked mission. Yes, Lady Hokage, Kiba and Sai said. Naruto was smiling. This is what I've been waiting for. Missions like these to sneak in and capture the enemy. He smiled sheepishly, while Sakura punched the top of his head. The blonde squat down and rubbed his head. Baka! This is nothing to be joking about. SS Sakura, why do you always have to hit my head? He whined. Naruto fell to one knee, which everyone from Takashi's group got up to their feet and rushed to him. Naruto-san, are you okay? Siko asked. The blonde showed no sign of answering and shortly went unconscious. We need to find a place for him to rest, Takashi mentioned. Oh. We can go to my friend's home. It's not too far from here, Shizuka mentioned. Okay, then can you take us there? Takashi asked. Shizuka nodded and got back in the driver's seat, as did everyone else, while Siko grabbed the unconscious blonde and pulled him with her to a seat. She sat next to the window and placed his head in her lap, even though his legs bent down the side of the chair and rested in the aisle. She looked down at his face and looked closely at the whisker marks. You're obviously hiding something from us, Naruto-san. Shido looked down the bus at Siko's position. Hey boss, he's out cold, Tsunoda whispered, as he took a seat next to him. Yes. I know. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yes. When we get to Ms. Marikawa's friend's home, we will kill him when he's resting. Chapter 2, Protecting the Living. Naruto stood across from the last member of the Akatsuki, Madara Uchiha. The two of them were both exhausted and pretty beaten up. You have two things that belong to me, boy. The Nine Tails and the Rinnegan that Nagato gave you. I'm still shocked that he sacrificed himself to bring back those that he killed back to life. One of the wounds on Naruto's chest began to bleed again, which caused him to fall on one knee. His body began to feel a little light due to all the blood he was losing. I will protect this world and he got back up to his feet slowly. Keep my promise. Madara looked at Naruto's Rinnegan eyes and saw that the blonde held his arm out in front. Bansho Tenin, he said, as Madara's body came flying to him. Naruto held out his other arm, as a Rasengan formed in his hand. When Madara was in reach, Naruto slammed the Rasengan, but it ended up going right through Madara. The blonde stumbled forward a bit, but kept his Rasengan formed. He turned around to see Madara with his Susanoo summoned. Susanoo raised its fist up, Nagato the blonde thought, as his Rasengan began to change color. Konan-chan, it began to grow bigger within his palm. Pervy Sage, it was no longer blue and instead took on a mixture of crimson and black colors. Naruto charged at the protected Madara, while Susanoo attempted to punch the blonde. I will keep my promise. The two attacks closed in. The Nine Tails is mine, Madara shouted. Naruto held out his Rasengan, Mada. Naruto's eyes shot open, as his body shot up on its own. He was breathing heavily and looked around to see that he was in a small room. He looked down to see that he was covered up by a white blanket and lying on a pallet. Looking around one last time, he realized that there was nothing else in here. He leaned forward and looked down the sheet. How did I end up in this world? He quietly asked himself once again. He threw the blanket off him and got up to his feet. He then heard a thump sound just outside the door and walked up to it. Turning the knob, he opened the door to see Shido sitting on the ground along with Tsunoda right next to him and Siko standing in front of them. The three of them looked at Naruto to see that same bored look on his face, while Siko smiled. You're up. Are you feeling better? Shido and Tsunoda began to sweat like crazy seeing that they were now sitting in between Siko and the blonde. Yeah. What's going on here? He asked. These two were trying to sneak in, Siko answered. Tsunoda and Shido shot up to their feet. No, we were just wanting to come in and check on you, Tsunoda said. Siko cocked an eyebrow. Then why were you two whispering when coming over here? Shido shrugged and turned to face Siko. Why, Bisujima-san? To simply not wake him up, of course. Naruto rolled his eyes and had enough of hearing them. He shoved the two men aside and walked past Siko, but stopped behind her. Thank you, he said, as he continued. Siko smiled and followed him back to the living room. Once the two were out of sight, Shido banged the wall. Damn it. Busujima-san is onto us. What now? Tsunoda asked. We'll just have to wait for a good chance. Naruto walked into the living room to see Takashi and Kota trying to force open a safe. Just before Siko could join him, she was pulled aside by Rei and Saya. It's our turn to use the bathroom to freshen up, Rei said. Siko looked back at Naruto, then back at the two. I was going to. You can talk to him later. You need to clean up anyway, Saya said, as they dragged Siko to the restroom. Naruto plopped down on a nearby chair and watched the two boys try to break open the safe. Come on, Komuro, Kota said, while Naruto sat there watching the two trying to break open the safe. Siko, Rei, Saya, and Shizuka all stripped down their last clothing. Rei and Shizuka stepped into the warmed-up tub and sank in, as a moan escaped their lips. Siko and Saya sat on a bench that was placed in front of a mirror. Sensei, they're so big, Rei announced. Yes, I've been told that a lot of times, she replied, as she grabbed her breasts. Rei just watched the nurse play with her breasts. Shortly after, the teen growled, then with a large splash, pounced on the older female, grabbing her large chest and squeezing it tightly in her hands, gaining a loud moan from the teacher. Saya washed her hair, while enjoying the warm water. This is what I needed. No more, Shizuka moaned, as Rei continued to play around with her large breasts. Sheesh, I think Rei's being a bit abusive, Saya mentioned, as she quickly glanced at the comical scene. I still don't understand why we have to take showers together. Siko glanced at her, as she washed her long slender arms. You already know the answer to that, Takagi-san, the violet-haired beauty commented. Yeah, but still she was silenced, as a blast of cold water assaulted her sensitive skin egg. She moaned loudly, her voice becoming hot at the sudden contact, as she ducked her head down a bit. Wow, your voice is more attractive than I thought. You must drive the guys crazy, the older girl commented with a small chuckle. Saya glared at the older girl, as she filled a tub of cold water, then she quickly dumped it down Siko's back. The violet-haired beauty gave a soft and quiet moan at the sudden contact. As she sounds more womanly, Saya thought, as she gazed at the older teen with a stupefied expression. Suddenly it became awkwardly quiet. They all began to think about what they should talk about next. Then one of them had a mysterious topic. What do you think of Naruto-san? Rei asked. Shizuka pursed her lips. Now that you mention it, I'm also curious about him. Saya nodded. I've never seen him at school or anywhere around town. I'm wondering where exactly he's from. That too. But I'm more curious about his abilities, Siko mentioned. You're right. Did you see how he blew back a few of them back at school? That's not normal, Rei said. Yeah. And his clothing is strangely odd, Saya mentioned. No normal being can do that. What if he's not from this planet? Shizuka asked. Do you think we should ask him? Rei asked. I want to know more about him if he's going to be around us, Saya said. Siko nodded in agreement. She's right. We know everyone in our group pretty well, except for Naruto-san. Okay then. So, we'll all. Shizuka was interrupted, as Rei once again attacked her breasts. Shizuka moaned out loudly. One more time, Kota said, as the two of them pulled on the crowbar, which seemed to do the trick, as the safe was forced open. Takashi fell backwards, while Kota looked inside and started to drool, as sparkles lit his eyes after seeing all the guns. A Springfield M1A1 super match, huh? It's only semi-automatic though. That's perfect. The M14 series is fully auto. This is less wasteful when it comes to ammunition. His grin grew in size. This is a 20-round magazine. This is illegal in Japan. He laid the gun down softly and reached for the other one. Oh hell yes. A Knight's SR equipped with a scope, he stated. Wait, no, you can't get that kind of thing in Japan. So it must be an AR-10 that was modified from top to bottom. He cried loudly. There's even a crossbow here. Naruto tilted his head and walked to the safe. He bent down and grabbed one from the safe. What's this? The blonde asked, as he pulled out a big gun and stood straight up. Kota looked at the gun and instantly squealed. That's an Ithaca M35 riot shotgun. It's a badass shotgun designed by the Americans. Really popular during the Vietnam War. Takashi grabbed a silver handgun with 2 extra clips and an adjustable barrel and pointed it at Kota, who started to freak out. Yo, Kota. What's this? He asked. The shorter boy grinned. That, my dear friend, is one of the most popular pistols. The Desert Eagle Mark 19, it lets you switch between all 3 calibers. He finished. Naruto examined the shotgun that he held and placed down with the other guns. I have no use for whatever these things are. Kota went wide-eyed. You don't know what guns are? Naruto looked at the shorter boy. No, he stopped, as he started to remember when he was only 13 and remembered the mission him and his team were on back in the snow country. The guards there wore chakra armor and used guns that fired kunais. He closed his eyes. Never mind, he said, as he walked out of the room to leave the two messing around with the weapons. Stopping at the entrance, he looked back at the two to see that Takashi was listening to every word Kota was saying about the weapons. The blonde blinked once and then felt a pair of arms around his neck, but not just that. He could smell the scent of liquor. Turning around, he saw Yuki wearing a black and red lace bra with black panties. She also had a faint blush on her cheeks. Naruto-kun, she moaned. You've been drinking, haven't you? The blonde asked. Yuki smiled. No. Naruto blinked once and was starting to get annoyed. Where's Shido and the others? Yuki placed her right hand on his chest and slid it down to his pants. Before she slid her hand into them, the blonde quickly snatched her wrist. Where are they? Yuki giggled slightly. Why don't we have some fun? As she used her other hand to slide up his shirt and feel his hard abs. Oh my, she said. Siko came from around the corner with a towel wrapped around her body, as she tied her hair with a ponytail and saw a drunk Yuki hitting on the blonde. She realized that she wasn't seen yet and decided to watch what would happen. Naruto grabbed her other wrist with his other hand and brought her hands in front of her body. Where are they? He asked once again. Yuki frowned. You're an asshole. They're downstairs. Naruto let go of her and walked right past her, and when he did, he saw Siko standing there. The towel she had wrapped around her hugged tightly around her body and showed her luscious curves, not to mention that it showed a good amount of her cleavage. He stopped in front of her and noticed that her hair was different. Naruto-san, can we? Not now, he said, as he walked past her. She turned around with a sad frown on her face and saw that he was headed for the stairs. That's all you have to say? Tsunoda asked. The boy with two different colors in his hair held his arm out in front and had his hand face the blonde. Bansho Tenin, he said, but nothing happened. Tsunoda looked at his arm, then up at Naruto with a dumbfounded look on his face. Naruto grinned and held out his other arm. Bansho Tenin, he said, as Tsunoda was now in the blonde's grasp as well. You're a funny one. Tsunoda grabbed the blonde's wrist. Let me go. Shido's eyes opened and saw that he was being held in the air by Naruto. What the hell? Naruto looked at Shido. It's good to see you up. What's going on? The teacher asked. You and your group are going to leave now. What? Why? Miura jumped in. I don't want mindless people in my group. What if we refuse? Miura asked. Naruto grinned, as he dropped both Tsunoda and Shido and performed a few hand signs. Everyone had no clue what the blonde was doing, but then the blonde slammed his hand on the ground, as he acted like he grabbed something from beneath the floor. He pulled his hand up, as a perfectly clean and sharp sword came out from under the floor. Once he pulled it out from below, he whipped the sword to his side. Then allow me to go ahead and end your lives here. Shido and his group were beginning to panic that the blonde was willing to kill them all if they refused to leave. Naruto lifted the sword up and pointed the very tip of it right in between Shido's eyes. So, what's it going to be? Naruto turned his head to the door after hearing gunshots from above. He snapped his head back and glared at Shido. You all stay here, he said coldly, as he left the room. Naruto ran into the living room to see the door to the balcony opened and heard another gunshot. He quickly ran out the door to see Kota shooting down at the streets. The blonde looked outside to see several of the dead walking towards some home not too far from their position. His eyes locked onto what they were after and saw Takashi fighting off a few of them trying to protect a little girl that seemed to be around 7 years old. Not just that, but there was a little dog with them and kept barking, which kept drawing the walkers' attention. I'll use the term walkers every now and then, which refers to the zombies. Damn it, Naruto said to himself, as he vanished in an instant. Kota didn't react to the blonde's actions and focused on protecting Takashi and the girl. Naruto appeared right in the middle of the horde, but they were still going after Takashi and the girl. The blonde placed his thumb and pointy finger in his mouth and whistled loudly. The horde all came to a stop, while Takashi smashed the head of one with his bat. Then he realized that they stopped coming after him. The horde all turned to the blonde's direction and all started going after him. Takashi didn't quite see who it was, but knew that this was their chance to get out of here. He held his hand out to the little girl. Come on, we're getting out of here. The little girl wiped her tears. But what about Daddy? She sobbed. Takashi looked at the girl's father lying there in blood. His eyes narrowed, as he grabbed a sheet that was hanging on a wire and placed it over his body. Looking around once more, he saw a few flowers and picked 2 purple flowers, as he gave one to the little girl. They walked up to the girl's father and both placed a flower on his body. They stood there for a few seconds, but then seeing that they were there long enough, Takashi held out his hand to the little girl again. Let's go. The little girl nodded, as she grabbed his hand. Takashi walked out of the yard and saw a clear path back to the house. They picked up the pace, hurrying to get back, while the dog was close behind. Naruto was slicing heads off of the walkers one by one. Every time he thought he was getting close to being done, more just kept appearing before him. Damn it, they just keep coming. He sliced the head off of another one, but one grabbed his jacket from behind and started to pull him. Naruto struggled, but then he slid his arms out of his jacket, letting his jacket being taken. The blonde fought back the walkers, as he looked to see that Takashi and the little girl, along with some dog, finally reached the gate. He saw that the gate opened and that they made it back inside. Once they were in, the gate quickly closed, which caused the blonde to smile weakly. Swinging the sword in a full 360-degree spin, several heads of the walkers flew up in the air. Blood splattered all over his body, as some of it also managed to get on his face. He looked around again and saw that they were just not letting up, as more and more just kept coming. Looks like I won't be able to get any sleep tonight, he said to himself, as he looked up at the moon. Naruto fought against an army of Zetsus and saw that Sakura, Sai, and Kiba were getting tired. He remembered that their mission was to ambush and capture Kabuto. If they kept going on like this, they wouldn't be able to complete the mission. You three go on ahead. I'll handle all of them, Naruto shouted. They all looked at the blonde. Are you crazy? There's way too many, Kiba yelled. Kiba's right, Naruto, you can't just take them all on, Sakura said. The blonde's lips formed into a small smile. Don't worry. Just go and complete the mission. We can't, Naruto. We're not going to leave you behind, Sakura continued. Naruto looked at Kiba, which the Inuzuka looked closely in the blonde's eyes and saw that Naruto wasn't playing around. Kiba nodded, as he grabbed Sakura's arm. Come on, he yelled, as Sakura began to run with Kiba by force, while Sai was close behind. Naruto! Sakura screamed, as she saw all the Zetsus closing in on the blonde. However, she saw that sheepish smile on his face, and saw that he was waving at them. A pain struck the blonde's head. Damn it! Not now, he said to himself, as he sliced the arms off of the walkers that were near him. He fought back the memory and remained on his feet, as he managed to grab the incoming hand from one of the walkers. He held onto it tight and swung his sword up, which cut that arm off. Naruto was starting to get annoyed with this and vanished, as he reappeared a few yards away from whence he stood. Several heads flew up in the air again, as blood shot up like a fountain. He looked around once again and saw that they just kept coming at him. Takashi and the rest of his group went back into the living room, as they walked toward the balcony, deciding to see how it looked outside. They could still hear Kota shooting at them. Kota, how's it looking? Takashi asked, as they joined in. Not good. They just keep coming, the short boy answered. Siko, now wearing nothing but an apron and a black thong, looked around back inside. Where's Naruto-san? He's down there somewhere, Kota answered. Yeah, when I went to save the little girl, I heard a loud whistle, but I couldn't find out who it was. But it has to be Naruto since you said that he's down there, Takashi said. Rei's eyes widened. Then shouldn't we go help him? Rei was no longer wearing her school uniform, and instead, she wore her pajamas, which she wore a tight light pink-colored tank top and white panties. Kota shook his head. I don't think we should. It's more likely that we'll just get in his way. However, a new presence joined in with the group. You all should just get some sleep. They all turned to see Naruto. Wait, how did you? Takashi couldn't finish his question. I'm just a clone. He's still down there fighting. He summoned me just so I can come tell you all to get some rest, the clone of Naruto said. Everyone was once again shocked seeing something new about this blonde. So he can make clones? Rei asked. Kota's eyes sparkled. He truly is some badass from a manga. The clone of Naruto chuckled and puffed away. There's a lot to be discovered by him. When he gets back, we defiantly need to have a talk with him, Takashi mentioned. They all nodded in agreement. Kota yawned. Let's just all get some rest and hope that everything's going to be all right with Naruto, Takashi said. They all nodded, as they walked back inside, except for Siko. She looked down at the street covered by hundreds of the walkers. Scanning the area, she couldn't find the blonde anywhere. Please be careful, she whispered to herself. The purple-haired beauty turned around and saw a grinning Rei. Does Busujima-san have a little crush on Naruto-san? Siko blushed slightly. Is that why you're wearing that outfit? So you can get his attention and have some time with him alone? Rei continued. Siko's blush darkened. No. I just wanted to ask him some questions. Rei smirked and walked around Siko, as she checked her back out. Then why would you wear an outfit that's so revealing? It looks to me that you just want to draw his full-on attention. Siko couldn't take it anymore and walked back inside, leaving a laughing Rei behind. Few hours later. 2:47 a.m. Naruto somehow ended up out of sight from the house and couldn't recall how it happened. He just kept decapitating those that kept closing in on him. Looking behind him, he saw that their numbers started to decrease. A smile came upon his face. Looks like I might get some sleep after he swung his sword vertically upward on one of them, which ended up cutting the entire body in half. All. During his long time of fighting, the blonde's pants managed to get torn below his knees. His shirt had small little rips here and there, but it still managed to cover up his body. However, his entire body managed to get covered in blood by those he cut down. The last few remaining walkers came up to the blonde and all lunged at him. Naruto grabbed one by the neck and slammed it on the ground, as he stabbed it in the head. He then ducked to avoid the walkers' grasps and spun a full turn, as he sliced their bodies in half. Blood showered down on his body, which he stood straight back up. His eyes remained narrowed the entire time he was out here and, as usual, had that bored look on his face. Looking around one last time, he saw hundreds of the walkers' bodies lying on the street. Something came up in his head, and so he grabbed a couple bodies at a time and began to make a wall with the bodies. An hour later, all the bodies that were once covering the street were now piled up in a giant wall. One wall blocked the path from where they all came from, while the other wall blocked the path that would take them out of this neighborhood. However, he heard a low groaning sound coming from behind him. Quickly turning around, he saw an unfamiliar-looking one. This one was once a living girl. She has long, messy blonde hair. Now that she's dead, her neck was rather long and her jaw was broken. Naruto held the sword out in front with the tip pointed at the forehead of the last one. "Just how did you get in here?" the blonde asked. The walker opened its mouth and spat out acid, which made contact with the blonde's eyes, which shut in an instant. Naruto's body shivered, as he dropped the sword and fell to his knees. His hands covered his eyes, as they began to burn terribly. He screamed out in pain, as the acid prevented him from opening them. The strange walker grabbed the blonde, and just before it was going to bite down on his head, Naruto grabbed the sword and quickly swung up at it vertically, which managed to cut the entire body in half. The blonde's weapon fell from his grasp and hit the ground once again. His eyes were still shut and were burning badly still. What the hell was that? He asked himself. Naruto? The blonde heard a feminine voice, but he couldn't see who it was. He tried to open his eyes, but they just wouldn't do to how bad they were burning. Damn it! He shouted. Hang on. Naruto felt himself being helped up to his feet and that his left arm was around someone's shoulders. Time, 3:58 a.m. Naruto was now sitting on a bed with the same girl that brought him back inside. She managed to wipe up all the blood off his face with a towel. She sat behind him on the bed and began to wrap his eyes with bandages. "You seem to always surprise us, Naruto-san." The blonde sat there and still couldn't recognize the voice. If only he had spent more time with the others, he might have figured out who this was. "I'm just doing what it takes to keep people alive," he replied. Then the blonde remembered. "Why aren't you asleep?" "I was too worried," she answered, as she finished tying the bandage. She maneuvered herself to where she was now sitting in front of him and facing him. She saw through his bandage-covered eyes that he cocked an eyebrow from her answer. "Please don't," he said. "Why?" she asked. "Because I don't know how much longer I'm going to stick around." Wait, she grabbed the bottom of the blonde's shirt, which he could tell she was trying to remove it. He raised his arms up, which she then pulled it off of him. "You plan on leaving us?" The girl's eyes locked on with the blonde's topless body. She saw his tan skin and his well-framed eight-pack. "Cheesy?" "I know," along with his chiseled chest. The girl blushed lightly. "Well, before I go any further, whom am I speaking to?" "Siko." "Well, whether you believe me or not, I'm not from around here." Siko tilted her head a bit. "What do you mean?" "I'm not from this world." Siko grinned slightly. "Well, some of us began to think that since the way you fight isn't normal." Naruto kept his head up, acting like he was looking at her, even though he couldn't see her. "Well, I'm from a place called the Elemental Nations. To be exact, the Fire Country in the village of Konoha." Siko looked at the temporarily blind blonde. "Well, what's it like?" "A lot different. Everything in this world has a lot more technology compared to mine. We don't have whatever it was we were in when we first met. Those guns could have found our way advanced than what I've seen in mine. Also, the people here are a lot weaker compared to the people from my world." Naruto answered, completely honest. Siko frowned at his last comparison. "I'm not trying to say it offensively. It's just that in my world, everyone's at war with each other. The majority portion of the population trained to become shinobi or ninja, I guess I should say, from their childhood," he explained to her. Siko pursed her lips and blinked once, as her left eyebrow rose. "So you're saying you're a ninja?" Naruto held out his arm with his hand open between the two, as a ball of chakra formed in the palm of his hand. Siko looked at the mysterious ball that formed in his hand and saw how beautiful it looked. "Just the color of it made her like it, yes," Naruto answered. The ball of chakra vanished, as Siko took a deep breath. "How young were you when you first started?" "I was 7 years old." Siko's eyes widened slightly. "So young." So, it's like some kind of military form, right? What rank were you? Naruto's head lowered, looking like that he was looking down at his hands. ANBU. Not ever hearing such a word like that, she had no clue how high that rank was. How high is that rank? It's pretty high. ANBU are high-level shinobi that work for the leader of their village, which is the Hokage. Us ANBU were always assigned very high-ranking missions from the Hokage themselves. The missions were assassination, capture, escort, or infiltration. We would always work in teams. Siko narrowed her eyes. I see. Siko was wishing his eyes weren't so bad, that way she could get a good look of his eyes. Who were your teammates? Naruto kept acting like he was staring at his lap. I wasn't really specifically assigned a permanent team. They always had me hop from one team to a different one. Although, I was partnered up with a woman quite a bit that had, he lifted his head up acting like he was facing her, the same kind of hair like yours. Her name was Yugao Yuzuki, and she was a lot older than I. But even though she was older than me by 10 years, I still found her rather attractive. That purple hair made her look so beautiful, and she was very mature. Even though there were times when she made me do a few things that was pure torture to me. Siko slightly blushed, seeing how he resembled her as one of his partners. It was like he was telling her what he thought of her. Silence roamed the room for a short time. What time is it? The blonde asked. It's a little after 4 in the morning. Naruto sighed. I'm going to get some sleep. Siko smiled slightly. Okay. She began to wonder where she would sleep since almost everything was taken. Shido's group were still in the downstairs room doing God knows what. Takashi and Kota took the couches in the living room, while Saya took the other couch that was in a different room. Rei and Shizuka shared the bed that was in the same room as Saya's. Kaji and Yuki shared the pallet that Naruto once rested after passing out in the bus. She sat on the bed overthinking if there was anything else besides the floor, but her thoughts were cut off as she felt a hand grabbing her wrists. She looked up at the blonde, as he slowly leaned down, bringing her down with him. Her eyes just kept staring at his bandage-covered eyes. The blonde rested his head on the pillow, while Siko lied next to him. Her lips formed into a smile, as she cuddled up against him, and once she got comfortable, she closed her eyes. Chapter 3. Not your normal world anymore. Ah, Yugao-san! Naruto called out. The purpled-hairy NBU turned to see a rather happy blonde. Naruto? The blonde came to a stop in front of her with a smile on his face. I was wondering. Can you help train me with a sword? Watching you is amazing. Yugao slightly blushed. Ugh. Come on, Yugao-chan. He begged. Yugao then took him up on his wish. Okay. But... Naruto's smile widened even more. Yes. Yes. Yugao raised her voice. But... The blonde quieted down and looked back at her. I will not make it easy. Got it? Naruto gave her thumbs up. Yes, ma'am. A couple days later. The sound of metal clanging against one another was echoing through the forest outside of Konoha. Yugao and Naruto were deep in the forest practicing their swordsmanship. The two of them both wore their normal ANBU outfit, but without the mask on. Naruto swung his sword downward at his partner, but Yugao easily blocked it by holding her sword horizontally. She overpowered the block and pushed him back a bit, as she attempted to stab his chest. The blonde swung his sword down at hers and managed to throw her off. However, she stepped on his sword, which caused him to lose his grip on it. Naruto looked down at his sword, then back up at Yugao, and saw her grinning. The blonde took a couple steps back and waved his hands out in front of him, while Yugao followed him with her sword in her grasp. Why, Yugao-chan, you kind of made me. Yugao swung her sword horizontally lined up with his neck, but Naruto managed to duck on time. Hey! You almost killed me! Yugao didn't say anything, and instead, she swung her sword vertically, which was lined up right in the middle of his body. Naruto jumped back a bit to avoid it. You're really trying to kill me? Once again, Yugao didn't say a word. Naruto took one last step back and bumped into something. He lifted his head up to see that he had bumped into a tree. Quickly, he looked back at Yugao to see that she was about to attack him again. The blonde's body jumped a bit, to see that his partner tried to cut him in half again, but the blonde spun himself around her. He made a run for his sword, but then he was roughly tackled. The two bodies rolled around the ground, but then they shortly came to a stop with Naruto lying on the ground, while Yugao was on top of him. The blonde tilted his head up a bit, and by looking far up, he could see his sword in reach. He quickly tried to grab it, but Yugao grabbed both his wrists and pinned them down on each side of him. Naruto was starting to not like how she wasn't giving him a chance and frowned slightly. Yugao-chan, this isn't. The blonde stopped what he was saying, as he looked up at her eyes, chocolate brown eyes. Naruto just lied there, seeing her beautiful looks with the sun's rays lighting around her head. The light from the sun was what was making her look even more attractive. Her ruby-colored lips, her gorgeous purple hair, and her brown eyes were what the blonde was examining. Yugao lowered herself, as Naruto leaned his head up slowly. The gap between them slowly began to close, but right when Naruto was getting ready to kiss her, he felt a sword stab his left leg. Yugao grinned and hopped off him on time before the blonde managed to scream in pain to where it would have driven her nuts. Naruto's upper body jolted up and looked at Yugao. What the hell? Yugao chuckled slightly. You should never fall into the temptation when it comes to a situation like that. If you were actually in a sword fight with a woman, and she was in my position, she would have had you in the palm of her hand like I did. And instead of just injuring you, she would just kill you instantly. Naruto sighed and crossed his arms, as he looked to his right not wanting to look at her. Whatever. Yugao giggled at the irritated blonde. Naruto's body woke up, but his eyes still couldn't open due to the bandages. His upper body leaned up and could feel someone else next to him. He then remembered what happened last night and smiled weakly. Hearing her still sound asleep was what made him smile, as he quietly got out of bed. He felt pretty good since he got to open up to someone a bit. Reaching for the knot that kept the bandages placed, he untied it and let them fall freely. The blonde took a deep breath, hoping that what he was about to do would actually work. He opened his eyes and felt absolutely nothing, except the slightest of air brushing against them. Looking down at himself, he realized that he was still shirtless and that his pants were completely ruined. A sigh escaped his lips, as he quickly glanced back at the still sleeping Siko. He walked out the door and quietly closed it once he was out. The blonde then headed for the restroom in need of a warm shower. Ever since he had woken up in that alley, he hasn't really had a time at all to relax and clean up. When he was walking down the hall, realized that it was quiet, which meant that everybody was still asleep. Once he turned a corner, a couple girls quietly followed him. When those two came to the corner, they both quietly peeked around it to see that the blonde stepped into the bathroom. The two girls stepped around the corner and walked to the bathroom. They then placed their ears against the door to hear the shower being turned on. The girls looked at one another. Did you see his body? Oh my god, I can't believe he even rejected me last night, Yuki said, as she placed her ear against the door again to hear the sound of a door being closed, which meant that Naruto was in the shower and was completely nude. The image of him being nude appeared in Yuki's mind. Yuki was still wearing her black and red lace bra and black panties. Well, I'm glad he rejected you, because I want him, Saya answered. Yes, Saya. Shockingly, Saya actually fell into such a level. She wore black extremely short shorts that were a little tight for her, and also wore a blue tank top that didn't cover her belly button. Even though when she was around the others, she didn't show that she had a thing for the blonde. However, when it came to Yuki, for some reason, she wasn't afraid to show it around her. Yuki grabbed the knob and turned it to verify that he didn't lock it. She didn't open it, but she looked back at Saya. Should we go in? What are you two doing? The two girls yelped, as they both looked behind them to see Takashi. Ugh, we were just Saya couldn't find a way out of this. Yuki realized that the boy was still dozy and let go of the knob. Saya and I here were just talking. That's all. Takashi rubbed his eyes. Okay, but please keep it down. Yuki quickly grabbed Saya's hand and walked off. We will, she replied. Takashi watched the two leave and let out a yawn. He knocked on the door. Who's in there? Naruto heard the knock at the door and decided not to answer since he was enjoying the warm water pouring down on his skin. He grabbed a washcloth and a bar of soap. Placing the soap on the cloth, he began to rub the cloth all around the soap to where it soaked in the suds. He placed the soap aside, as he began to wash his entire body with the cloth. Another knock came from the door. Hello? Naruto rolled his eyes. It's Naruto. I'll be done in a second. Oh. No need. I was just wondering who was in there, Takashi replied. Naruto closed his eyes since the warm water was making his body feel a bit too relaxed. 20 minutes later. The blonde turned the water off, finally thinking that he was in there long enough. He opened the door and grabbed a nearby towel. Stepping out, he dried his hair followed up by his face, and then he wrapped the towel around his lower body. Quickly slipping his sandals back on, he walked out the door and left it open. Little did he remember, he left behind his pants that are laying on the floor. After finishing his shower, his muscles no longer ached. The blonde came to a stop remembering something yesterday. It was before he went out to fight off the horde. Naruto ticked and stormed to the stairs remembering a certain group he told to get lost. In a matter of seconds, the blonde came upon the room that Shido and his group is in. Kicking the door open, he saw that Shido and the others were sound asleep. He cocked an eyebrow, but then he didn't care if they were or not. Get up! A couple of them groaned and slowly moved. Get up! This time, the rest of the group woke up and were startled from the outburst. They all looked at the doorway to see the blonde. What? Shido asked. Have you all forgotten? What did I tell you all yesterday? Naruto questioned. Shido's eyes slowly began to fully open and stumbled to his feet. Are you kidding? You can't just throw survivors out like that. We all have to stick together. I'm not going to argue on this. You know why I'm making you leave, so quit trying to act like as if I don't know what you're trying to do, Naruto said. Where are we going to go? Shido continued to ask more questions. Naruto cupped his chin. Let's see. I'm sure that these other houses near us are clear. Why don't you claim one for you and your group? Why can't we just? Because I'm not going to let you try and have the others killed like you intended on with Kaji. Shido this time was at a loss of words. Now go. Naruto ordered. Tsunoda was the first to walk out, followed up by the others. Shido remained where he was, but then he walked out. Naruto slammed the door shut and walked up the stairs behind Shido to make sure that his group actually was going to leave. Takashi and Koda were talking to each other in the living room, but it came to a quick stop when they saw Tsunoda and the rest of Shido's group walking by. Once Shido walked by, they saw Naruto right behind them. Hey, Naruto! Takashi called out. The blonde ignored him and escorted the group full of misguided people to the door. Tsunoda opened the door, as they all began to walk out one by one. When it came down to Shido, the teacher stopped once he stepped foot outside and turned to Naruto, but the blonde roughly shoved him out. Naruto stepped out and slammed the door shut, as he walked past them all to the gate. He slid the gate open. Get lost, the blonde demanded. One by one, Shido's group walked out. The door opened, as Takashi came rushing out. Naruto, what the hell? The blonde didn't turn to face him and instead kept an eye on the group, making sure they didn't try anything. They can take care of themselves. Why are you kicking them out? They're humans just like us. Everyone that's alive needs to stick together. Naruto smirked. You're sounding like Shido now. Well, he's right. You can't just let them leave. Unless you want to end up like a mindless fool like them and want to die, I suggest you shut up and listen to me. Takashi cocked an eyebrow. Then tell me why you're kicking them out. I'm kicking him out for the sake of you and the others, Naruto answered, as he closed the gate and walked back to the house. They wouldn't have killed us though, Takashi said, as he walked in after Naruto. The blonde walked into the living room with Takashi right behind him. Okay, maybe you're right. But they would leave you behind to die, which is the same as killing you, Naruto stated, as he plopped onto a chair. Koda was curious of what was going on and decided to jump in. What happened? Takashi kept his full-on attention at the blonde, which had his eyes closed. Naruto here kicked out Mr. Shido and his group out. Koda let out an humph. Good, I hate Mr. Shido. He would always pick on me in school. Takashi then snapped his attention to the shorter boy. How can you say that? We need to help anyone that's alive to remain alive. Naruto kept his eyes closed. Tell me, Takashi. Would you rather stay here with us and remain alive, or would you rather be with them and end up being left behind to die? Takashi. Koda, Takashi, and even Naruto opened his eyes, as they all saw Rei standing in her pajamas. He deserved to get kicked out. He's an asshole. Naruto smiled and closed his eyes again, glad to see that you and Koda agree. Miyamoto-san is right. Takashi and Koda saw Nurse Shizuka wrapped in nothing but a bath towel join in. Koda, however, had an instant nosebleed to see that the towel could hardly contain those jugs of hers. Takashi, on the other hand, blushed madly. I never liked Mr. Shido. He was always a rude teacher back at school. Naruto got up from his seat, with Shizuka and Rei's eyes were instantly glued to the blonde's body. He walked out the living room and to the door, while everyone just watched him. Where are you going? Koda decided to ask. The blonde opened the door. I'm going to get some clothes, he answered, as he stepped out and closed the door behind him. Takashi grunted. I'm afraid that he's going to end up being trouble. The others looked at the boy. Why? Rei asked. I think he's going to brush us off later on. I don't think Naruto-san would do such a thing, Shizuka said. Think about it. We have no idea where he came from and he shows up at the school out of nowhere. Doesn't that seem strange? And why would he even help us? He doesn't even know us. Well, maybe Naruto-san is one of those guys that like to help those in need, Shizuka stated. Yeah. Naruto-san is fairly strong and I don't see why he won't want to help us, Koda mentioned. That might be, but I just think that something's up, Takashi said. Just outside the living room, Siko was leaned up against the wall and had listened to everything that transpired. Naruto landed outside the gate. The blonde just didn't feel like opening it since it would take more time, which is why he decided to jump over it. He walked out to the bloody street and looked at both sides to see the walls he had made last night. Looking back out from where he had finished off the last and yet strange walker, he saw his sword lying there. Quickly appearing next to his sword, he picked it up and walked over to the wall to his right. The wall he was going to was the wall that blocked the path from where they all came from. He was now standing in front of the wall and looking up at it. Naruto. The blonde looked behind him to see Kaji. What is it? Let me come with you. Naruto shook his head. You stay here with them. Why? I follow you since you saved my life. Not this time. Kaji's body twitched. What? The blonde was now completely gone, before Kaji could even get an answer. Naruto appeared on the other side of the wall and could see the smoke coming from within the city up ahead. This poor world's going to come to an end if this keeps up, he thought to himself, as he began to walk down the street that would take him into the city. Kota sat on the couch playing with the guns he had discovered in the safe from last night. Takashi was in the kitchen looking for something to eat and or make for the others. Opening the fridge, he didn't quite find much in it. He closed the fridge and stood straight back up, but as he turned to look in the pantry, he spotted Siko with a frown on her face standing there wearing the same apron. Morning, Busujima-san. However, even though Takashi was trying to be friendly, Siko still kept the same frown. After overhearing the boy in the living room earlier, she began to think a little less of him. After all, Naruto wasn't even there, and plus, he even saved everyone from being overrun last night. If he hadn't done so, then they wouldn't be here after all. They more than likely would have took the Humvee that was out in the driveway, or if they couldn't make it to that on time, then they would all be dead. Takashi, why are you assuming Naruto-san is a bad person? Takashi sighed in annoyance. I'm not trying to say that he is. I'm just saying that I wouldn't fully trust him. Even though he saved Kaji at school and saved us from last night, I still think something's up. Siko then remembered the event from last night of how the blonde explained things of where he came from. I don't know how much longer I'm going to stick around. She remembered that statement specifically, and then reminded herself to have another chat with the blonde later. Where is he, by the way? Takashi sighed. He said he was going to get some clothes. Siko's eyes widened slightly. Where exactly? I don't know. More than likely somewhere in town since he went outside. Siko's frown formed into a sadder look. Please don't leave us, Naruto-san. She hoped. Naruto found himself standing in front of a clothing store that actually turned out to not be too far from the household. The blonde has only been walking for about half an hour. Luckily, he hasn't ran into any of the dead yet. He saw that the doors to the store were forced open and also saw glass everywhere. What caught his attention even more was the blood on the ground as well. A gust of wind came from his right, which caused his hair to blow with it. His upper body began to shiver from the impact of it, which he then walked in wanting to find some proper clothing. Once he was inside, he saw clothes racks that were knocked down all over. Taking in his surroundings, he walked to one of the racks and realized that this one was full of men's shirts. His eyes roamed around the rack, but then they glued onto a gray-colored, short-sleeved shirt. Dropping his sword to the ground, he grabbed it and quickly threw it over his head. Pulling it down his body, he realized that his muscles seemed to show through the shirt. He shrugged and began walking through the store looking for some boxers. He came to a shelf that consisted of what he was looking for. Grabbing one of the sealed packages, he tore it open and grabbed a pair of black boxers. Looking around to make sure the coast was clear, he unwrapped the towel and slid on the boxers. He threw the towel over his left shoulder and continued his search, but this time, for some pants. It didn't take long for what he was looking for, but instead of finding pants, he found something else that he has never seen before. He found a rack full of jeans, but he didn't know what they were called. Curious of how they would feel, he grabbed a pair and slid his legs through them. He lifted them up and zipped the zipper up, followed by buttoning them together. In his opinion, they felt rather comfortable. Now, he went walking around looking for what he always likes to wear, a jacket. Quick! Gather the money and let's get out of here. Naruto turned to the source of the voice and saw a group of people coming into the store. They all rushed to where the register was, as one of them easily busted it open. It was a group of 4 people, all of them wearing ski masks. They all had a crowbar in their hands, while 2 of them had flashlights. One of the guys shined his flashlight around and came to a stop, as it revealed the blonde. Hey! Come here! The man ordered, which the other 3 looked at their partner, and saw that he was shouting at someone. They looked where the flashlight shined and saw the blonde standing there. The one that broke open the register took a couple steps towards the blonde's position. Get over here! Naruto blinked slowly with the same bored expression on his face. Curious of what they wanted him for, the blonde walked over to the group. As Naruto came up to the group, the guy that broke the register walked up to the blonde face to face. Hand over all the money you got, boy. The blonde cocked an eyebrow. Why would you need money if your world's coming to an end? Eh? My world? The man looked at the blonde's eyes. Wait, what's with your eyes? The other 3 were curious when their partner pointed out the blonde's eyes and all decided to join in. They all looked closely at the boy's eyes. Wow, I've never seen eyes like those. Gunshots were being fired off just outside the store, which drew everyone's attention. They couldn't quite see from inside, as the group rushed outside, except Naruto. Once those 4 were outside, Naruto could hear more gunshots going off. Naruto held out his hand, as his sword came back into his hand. He looked over at the counter where the register was and spotted some strange jacket that he had never seen before. The color of it is black, and not to mention that it was sleeveless. Once he grabbed the jacket, he realized that it felt smooth and rather cool feeling. He quickly put the jacket on and walked out the store. The blonde came to a stop to see an army of the dead that had managed to come out of nowhere. That wasn't all he was seeing though, but he also saw that there's a massive group of living people. He examined closely and saw that these guys were enjoying killing them off. Hearing laughter from them was a bit strange to the blonde. The people fighting the army of dead all either had some type of gun, but those that didn't have firearms were using close combat weapons such as baseball bats, pipes, etc. Kill them all! A guy shouted. Chapter 4: World War Zombies. Naruto stood there with his sword tightly in his hand. The scene before him just kept reminding him of how the army of Zetsus just kept on coming. The group of living was falling one by one. The blonde's attention came to a man that had been tackled to the ground by a couple of the walkers. The man screamed in pain, as the walkers all began to tear his stomach open and pull out his organs. The others witnessed the man being torn apart, which caused a few of them to run away. Some stayed and wanted to kill them all since they pretty much went psycho. Before the blonde's eyes, several of the walkers slowly came towards him. His grip tightened on the handle of his sword, as he took a couple steps toward the oncoming horde. Location: Fujimi Airport, not sure if that's the name to be exact. Beasts obliterated. 2 people lied on top of a small building. One is a tanned female with purple hair and wore a black combat suit with a bulletproof vest. Also, she is shown to be wearing a white choke collar along with shooting glasses. The woman stood up and grabbed her breasts. Phew. A man that wore the same 1st Squadron police uniform as the woman, which consists of a full-body suit, knee and elbow pads, and a bulletproof vest. He also wears a white cap. He has a scar just above his right eye. The man looked at her. What are you doing? The woman stretched her arms out. I wasn't able to get any sleep this morning, so I was starting to feel numb. The man grinned. I can give you a massage if you'd like, Rika. If you can shoot better than me, then sure. The man held his arms out. Then count me out. Don't be ridiculous. Weren't you the one who was inducted into the best 5 of all the police officers in the country? Taijima. Anyway, we're not allowing ships to dock, but people can leave the offshore airport, Rika mentioned. Is it because of the new regulations? Yeah, blame the people up top. The indispensable engineers who were in charge of the airport maintenance are returning home to their families in droves. Anyone could leave next. Who knows what would have happened if we hadn't come along? They would have been, Taijima mentioned. We have enough hands for now, but it'll only last for so long. We haven't been able to do much damage to those monsters. And since Hokkaido and Kyushu airports are starting to accept passengers again, we may have to send some support to strengthen their defenses, Rika said. But we don't have an unlimited supply of ammunition. Rika smiled. Are you going to run away? Taijima kept a straight face. No, not yet. Rika kept the same smile on. I'm going to go to the city eventually. What? You got a boyfriend or family members there or something? Rika removed her vest and then began to unzip her suit. When her suit came unzipped, she revealed to wear a white sports bra. I have a friend there. Achoo. Bless you, Marikawa-san, Koda said. Thank you. Shizuka now was wearing brown hot pants with her white shirt. Takashi just stood in the living room and took quick glances at the sleeping girl that he had saved from last night. She has shoulder-length pink hair with bangs reaching down from the side of her temples stretching outwards, burgundy-colored eyes, a mole under her left eye, and wears a white headband on her head. She was wearing a white jacket, a pink dress top and a light blue skirt, black socks and shoes. Ray looked at her childhood friend and began to worry. She was now wearing her school uniform again, but she stopped wearing the black, thigh-high socks she had on and replaced them with knee and elbow pads. The brunette realized ever since Naruto had sent Shido's group out, that her childhood friend has been rather frustrated lately. She walked over to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Takashi. The boy didn't say anything and kept an irritated look on his face. Taka. The boy snapped his head to look at her. What? Ray jumped a bit, but then her worried look turned into an angry expression. You need to stop worrying about Mr. Shido. He would have killed us if him and the others were to continue staying with us. And how would you know? They're alive just like we are, and I'm sure he would have wanted to stick together and live. Did you not hear what happened to Kaji? Mr. Shido almost killed him. She's right, Kaji said, as he joined in, while everyone turned to face him. Kaji still wore his school uniform. I was running behind because I managed to drop my books, but when I started to catch up to them, I tripped and sprained my ankle. I fell and somehow slid far enough to end up right below him. I asked him to help, but he just looked down at me and said that the weak don't deserve to live. That's when he kicked my face and left me behind. Siko had managed to hear the conversation going on and walked into the living room. She wore female battle boots with heels, long lace purple stockings, purple gloves, her school uniform top, a skirt that shows the string of her thigh and her entire right thigh, and a special belt to hold her sword. Since she managed to hear everything, she decided to chip in. Takashi. Naruto kicked them out to protect us. I don't see why you're upset with him. Takashi remained quiet, while absorbing everything being said from the others. Yeah? Why are you upset with him? Ray asked. Takashi sighed. I just... What? Do you think that Naruto would end up kicking us out? Ray asked. Kota and all the others eyed him, curious of what his answer is. No, he won't. Everyone turned their attention out to the hallway to see Yuki in her school uniform. I was in Mr. Shido's group since it all started at school. I felt for his foolish words, and then I saw him leaving students behind for their death. Flashback. Screaming rained the halls and classrooms. Student and teachers stormed down the halls trying to find a way out of the school. When the announcement was made and the person that had made the announcement ended up screaming for their life through the intercom, which is what caused this massacre. Students were being shoved aside, attacked by others. It was just a disaster. Yuki was trying her best to get past the wave of students, but then she was instantly knocked down. Her back hit the wall pretty hard, and when someone stepped over her legs, the person's knee accidentally hit her across the head. The hit was rough, but it didn't completely knock her out. The hall began to die down, while Yuki sat there and looked at the direction she came from. She saw someone slowly walking and that the person was covered in blood. The person was groaning, and she spotted a student with Mr. Shido running from that person. Mr. Shido, it's going to catch up to us, the student mentioned. The teacher looked back at the person. You're right. Which is why Shido tripped the student and watched how he ended up going face first to the floor. You'll buy me some time. The teacher decided to walk. The boy tried to get up, but was pinned to the ground, as the person he was running from began to rip open his body. Shido looked down to his left to see a girl sitting against the wall. He grinned, seeing that it was the sexy Yuki Miku. He knelt down. Yuki, come with me. We will get out of here together, he said, as he placed his hand on her thigh and began rubbing up and down. Shido stood up and held his hand out to her. Yuki had no expression after seeing how he used a student to buy him some time. She was still a bit out of it after taking a hard hit to her head. Looking up at him, she took his hand, as the two of them began to walk away looking for an exit. End of flashback. Naruto did the right thing by sending them off on their own, Yuki said. Takashi sighed and scratched his head. Okay. I just can't help but think that there's something up. Naruto swiftly spun around one of them, and in the process, he managed to cut the body in half, followed up by decapitating another one. He stood straight up to see that there was just no end to them. The group of living was decreasing immensely. The people that stayed to fight weren't showing any sign of leaving. They all laughed like maniacs. Even those that were being torn apart went down laughing. Naruto stood there watching the dead devouring the living. Just in a matter of seconds, the blonde was the only one left. The dead managed to take out every last one of the living. Naruto looked at the direction from where he came from and saw that there was another road that led to a different route. He looked closer and saw that there was a bridge with a pond just below it. Perfect. I'll just lure them to the bridge and knock them all over. Naruto spun one of the dead around and grabbed it by the back of the head. Shinra Tensei. The force was so strong that Naruto still had the head in his hand, but the body was completely gone. The blood from the head poured out of it and onto the street, which would attract the other ones that at a good distance. The blonde grinned and began running toward the bridge with the massive horde right behind him. Time, 6:58 p.m. One each on. The little girl that Takashi saved shouted. The boy looked at her. Yes, Alice? The little girl's stomach then began to growl. I'm hungry. I think we all are. But Busujima-san should be about done with dinner. Actually, you can all come in now. It's ready, Siko called out. Everyone's ears perked up and they all rushed to the kitchen. Since it's been a couple days since the breakout started, they were all focusing on surviving than having to feed their bodies. Once everyone came into the kitchen, they saw bowls and a pair of chopsticks sitting on the counter, one for everyone. Every single one of them, except Siko, dashed to the bowl and grabbed the chopsticks. Since it's been a while since they've actually eaten, their reaction that they displayed would be expected. They all looked into the bowl. Chicken ramen? It looks delicious, Ray mentioned. Siko smiled, as she grabbed her own bowl. Thank you. Naruto stood on the railing of the bridge and looked at the sunset. Earlier, he had managed to knock all the dead over and into the pond. They couldn't swim, and eventually all drowned. The wind started to pick up and he needed to get back home before it got dark. He jumped back off the railing and onto the road. The road he stood on began to have mini quakes. He looked down to see that the road wasn't opening, but then he looked to his right and saw a couple of giant mutated walkers. They stood at about 10 feet tall and were completely buff. The arms were all muscle, and it wasn't just like any ordinary arm with muscle, but their arms were just complete muscle and disgustingly huge. The legs were also wide and muscle, but they were nowhere near as big as the arms. Their heads were a normal size for any human being, but their eyes were completely yellow. What the hell? Naruto asked himself. The two giants charged at him like a couple of buffalo. They closed in on the blonde and attempted to slam their fists down on him, but the blonde easily jumped back to avoid them. He flipped his sword in his hand to where he held it backwards, and once his feet hit the ground, he charged at the two with incredible speed. In a flash, he appeared behind the two giants, as blood shot out in the air. He ended up cutting them in the stomach, which took a form of an X just as he turned around. He was hit hard against the gut and sent soaring back. His back hit the ground rather roughly and ended up sliding a few feet. When he came to a stop, he leaned up and saw the giants coming at him again. Since his assault didn't work, he knew that he was going to have to start cutting off their arms or legs. The giants closed in, and like last time, they attempted to smash him, but Naruto spun around them and attempted to cut their legs off. However, that didn't quite happen. Their muscle was immensely massive that it was too hard to cut through. Naruto looked up at the giants and was instantly kneed up against his chin. The blonde was sent in the air, and due to how hard the impact was, he was forced to let go of his sword. The giant grabbed the blonde's ankle before he was too high to reach and then slammed him hard on the ground. A sharp pain shot throughout his back and then he coughed up some blood. The giant let go of him and attempted to punch down at him, but the blonde vanished in a swirl of leaves. Just a few yards away, Naruto reappeared with a little trail of blood coming from the corner of his lips. The other giant charged at the blonde, while Naruto held out his arms and formed a Rinnegan in each hand. Quickly jumping over the incoming giant, the blonde dropped behind it and slammed both Rinnegans on its back. It managed to cause the giant to go sliding forward, but it didn't last long, as it stopped itself. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. What the hell is with? The other giant came from behind the blonde and punched down at his head, but Naruto vanished once again. The blonde reappeared right where he had dropped his sword, which he quickly picked it back up. Looking at where he once was, he saw the two giants looking around for him. He swung his sword horizontally, which ended up shooting a powerful gust of wind towards them. The wind caused the two giants to stumble a bit, but then they both glanced to where it came from and saw their target. They charged towards him, while Naruto flipped his sword once again to where he held it backwards. Seeing how the giants were at a good distance from him still, Naruto had enough and held out his free hand facing the first one, Bansho Tenin. The giant out in front came hurling towards the blonde. Its arms and legs were useless, and since Naruto saw that it was close enough, he flicked his wrist down, which caused the giant to hit the ground face first right in front of him. Naruto quickly lined his sword up with its neck and with a quick swing, he decapitated it. Since he couldn't find anything else to work, he easily removed its head. He knew that there were several other ways to get rid of it, but he wanted to continue working on his swordsmanship. Quickly looking up ahead, he saw the other one just about to pounce on him. The last one tried to smash down on the blonde's head, but Naruto easily shifted to the side. The blonde jumped up with some speed and quickly appeared behind the giant. He whipped his sword to the side, as blood hit the ground. The blonde stood there with a bored look on his face, as he heard a thump hit the ground. Turning around, he saw the giant's head lying there, and then saw the body fall next. So, beheading them seems to be the only trick with swordsmanship, he said to himself, and then realized that it was completely dark now. He looked up and saw that half of the moon lit the area. Naruto's typical straight bored lips slowly turned into a saddened frown. Where is everyone? He looked around the area to see all the corpses lying around. A sigh escaped his mouth, as he sealed his sword away and began to head back to the others. Chapter 5, Guard Duty. Time, 11:46 p.m. Takashi sat in the living room with the TV on. He kept going through the channels to see that none of them were on air. A sigh escaped the boy's mouth. He was the only one awake due to not being able to sleep. A knock came from the door, which drew Takashi's attention. Another knock came from it. As he grabbed his bat, he got up and walked to the door. He quietly approached the door and looked through the peephole. All of a sudden, the door busted open, which hit the poor teen smack on the face. He was forced to drop the bat, as he placed his hands on his face and hunched over. What the he nearly shouted, but not too loud to where it woke the others up. Maybe you should learn to lock doors. Takashi froze for a second and recognized that serious voice, as he stood back straight up and removed his hands off his face. Naruto? The teen asked, as he examined the blonde's new attire. Blue jeans, gray short-sleeved shirt with a sleeveless leather jacket, and his black sandals. Nice look. Ugh, thanks. I've actually haven't seen clothes like these before, he mentioned, as he looked down at himself. Takashi cocked an eyebrow. Wait. You're saying you don't know what jeans are? And leather jackets? Yeah. Takashi gently face-palmed himself, while Naruto walked past him. Takashi quickly turned around and saw the blonde walking into the living room. He shook his head and went to join the blonde. Naruto plopped down onto the single chair and let out a tiring sigh. Takashi stood in front of the blonde. Where did you go? Naruto closed his eyes. War? War? Yes. When I went to the clothing store, I ran into a couple of thugs. Then shortly later, there was a bunch of noises outside and then we all went out. That's when I saw several of the living fighting against the dead. It was like a war. It didn't take long for them to overrun the living. Some ran to safety, while some of them stood to fight. Those that stayed went down laughing like maniacs. Takashi's eyes narrowed. So you took care of them on your own? Like in one-man army? Naruto shrugged. I guess you can put it that way. Takashi was at all. You really are something else. Let me fill you in with something. When I took care of them, there were 2 more that came from nowhere. These 2 weren't like the others. They were massive and pretty tough. I couldn't cut through any part of their body except their head. So, there aren't just normal walkers? Right. There seems to be some more special ones out there. I see. It's even more dangerous than I expected. Silence roamed through the area, but since the blonde's been gone for the whole day, he was curious of what happened here when he was gone. So, did anything happen? Takashi shook his head. No. We all just stayed here and had the day to relax. Sounds fun. Naruto. The blonde looked at the teen. I'm sorry for the way I jumped you earlier today when you kicked Mr. Shido's group out. Naruto's eyes narrowed. It's fine. I'm just trying to protect you all. Takashi smiled weakly. Where are from? The blonde cocked an eyebrow and then began to remember of the conversation he had with Siko the other night. All you need to know is that I'm not from around here. Takashi chuckled. Well, we all kind of figured that by the way you handle them so easily. And with those little tricks you do, that's not normal. Naruto sighed. In your world, of course it's not. Takashi questioningly looked at the blonde. Where were you from then? Naruto sighed. I really don't feel like going through this again. Again? Whom did you talk to about this? That's none of your concern. But I will tell you this, I'm not from this planet. Where are you from then? A sigh escaped the blonde's mouth. I don't feel like repeating myself. Takashi frowned. Looks like I'll have to ask everyone and find out the harder way. A growling sound alerted the teen. What was that? Takashi asked, as he looked at the blonde to see that his eyes were slightly widened and saw a feint of red across his cheeks. Is there anything to eat? Takashi couldn't help but laugh, seeing the blonde feeling slightly embarrassed. Why, yeah, he continued laughing. I think his laughing began to die down a little. There might be some leftover ramen. Even though Naruto kept his cool around the group, his mood brightened hearing ramen and shot to the kitchen with incredible speed that it managed to knock Takashi to the ground. Time, 9:46 a.m. Siko stirred in her sleep, but then her eyes opened. She had the look on her face that showed that she was still half asleep. She wrapped her arms around the pillow and planted her head back on it, but little did she know that the door to the room opened. A smile formed on her face as she snuggled her head against the pillow. All of a sudden, she was hit on the head and immediately jolted up and saw that a pillow hit her. She looked at the door entrance to see someone she hasn't seen all day yesterday. Get up, Naruto said. Siko frowned at him. Was that really necessary? She asked, as she stared at his new outfit. Naruto kept his normal bored expression look on his face. Yes, he answered, as he walked out of the room. If the blonde had stood there any longer, he would have seen her uncover herself from the sheets to show him that she was wearing nothing but a thong. Siko sat on the side edge of the bed and looked down at her clothing lying on the floor. With Naruto. The blonde stood in the middle of the living room, while Takashi, Alice, Saya, Rei, Shizuka, Kota, and Kaji sitting around examining the blonde's new attire. Naruto was already getting impatient, waiting on the other two to join them. What is it you called us out here for? Saya asked. I'll tell you when the other two get in here, Naruto answered. Shizuka yawned. But why did you have to wake us up this early? The busted nurse asked, as she rubbed her eyes. Nothing came from the blonde, while the others frowned at him. You mean to tell me that you woke us up early just for the hell of it? Rei asked. I'll explain soon, he answered. I want to know now. I was enjoying my sleep, Rei nearly shouted. Naruto tensed a bit from the brunette's shouting, but waved it off and remained standing waiting on the other two. A couple of seconds later, Siko came walking in wearing the same clothing from yesterday. Why did you have to wake me? The purple-haired beauty looked around the room to see almost everyone sitting around up. Shortly after Siko's appearance, Yuki came in wearing her school uniform. The look on her face looked to be rather frustrated. She instantly glared at the blonde. You're lucky you're hot, or else I would be beating the shit out of you. Naruto cocked an eyebrow, but then decided to get with the task at hand. Okay, listen. This is only optional if you want. That's if you want to keep wearing the same smelly clothing you all have. Saya smiled lightly, seeing where this was going. Do you mean? Yes. There's a clothing store not far from here. I'll take one group at a time though. Shizuka was the first to respond. I won't have to go. I'll just use my friend's clothing. Other than Shizuka, the guys, and Siko, the other girls cheered among themselves. However, I'll be choosing the group. Fine, fine, whatever, they all said at the same time. Naruto looked at everyone, but remembered that he didn't get everyone's names. Actually, first 4 out the door goes. Naruto was forced to be spun around in a full 360. He shook his head and saw that Rei and Yuki were the first ones out. Everyone was pretty shocked at how the two girls were so fast that it made Naruto fully spin around. Kota and Alice were next to get up. Meet you outside then, Kota said, as him and the little girl ran for the door. I guess we'll go when you all get back then, Kakashi said. Naruto was still a bit shocked at the two girls, but then rubbed it off. All right then, he said, as he went after them. Rei and the others all stood in front of the giant wall of the dead and looked up at it. How are we going to get over? Yuki asked. Rei pouted and grunted. I want to get some new clothing. Kota sighed. We know. But please stop acting like. Rei glanced at where Kota was and saw that him and Alice were gone. Huh? Where did they go? Yuki looked around. I don't. The two of them both felt an arm wrap around their midsection and felt themselves being pulled. They each looked to their side and saw Naruto holding on to them. They both slightly blushed. Naruto, what are you? Yuki couldn't finish what she was about to say, as they were now both high above the ground. The two girls looked down and couldn't believe that Naruto could even jump this high. A smile came upon the two girls' face and enjoyed looking down at whatever was below. Their little enjoyment came to an end, as they landed on the other side of the wall. The blonde let go of them and walked on out ahead. Let's go, he said. Kota and the others stayed back a bit. That was so cool, Kota shouted, as him and Alice followed the blonde. Yuki and Rei looked at each other for a quick second and then followed the others. Moments later, the group came upon the building, but they didn't go in right away. They all looked around the area to see all the dead bodies lying around. Geez, it's like a bloodbath here, Kota mentioned. Naruto walked into the store not wanting to see the results of yesterday's war, while the others slowly followed him, but were more into looking at the scene around them. This is a disaster, Rei said. The others remained quiet, as they eventually found themselves walking into the store. Naruto was standing in the middle of a path, but then he was forced to spin in a full 360 once again. His eyes were slightly widened and turned around to see Kota with Alice just standing there. He turned back around to see that the two girls were out of sight. Sheesh. They're just like. Flashback. Come on, hurry. Naruto walked slowly with his hands in his pockets, and kept his sight on the two girls ahead of him. He saw Ino and Sakura standing there waiting for him. You two are hard to keep up with. Ino and Sakura couldn't wait for the sluggish blonde. They ran up to him in a blink of an eye, as they both grabbed his wrists and ran for the store up ahead. Naruto couldn't keep his feet in sync with the girls and instantly tripped onto his stomach, which the poor blonde was now officially being dragged. His face sliding on the dirt road was starting to burn his face. Stop. He tried to shout, but the two girls were too excited and didn't hear him. In a matter of seconds, the blonde felt that they came to a stop. Before he got to look up, his face was forced to hit the ground. Naruto placed the palm of his hands on the ground and shot himself up to his feet to see that the two girls were gone. Sheesh. Now I see why Shikamaru says that girls can be troublesome at times, the blonde said to himself, as he dusted his hands off. End of flashback. Naruto squinted his eyes and placed his right hand on his forehead. Kota jumped a bit. Naruto, he called, as he and Alice ran over to him. Naruto held his left arm out and waved back at the two, which made them stop. Don't worry about me, just go change. But you're? Just go. I'm fine. Kota stood there for a bit and then nodded, as he looked down at Alice. Come on, Alice, let's go get you some clothes. Alice smiled and began to laugh lightly. Yay! She shouted, as her and Kota went ahead. Naruto shook off the minor pain and brought his arm back down to his side. Why does this hurt? The blonde turned around to watch and make sure that nothing comes in. His arms folded across his chest. Man, now I feel like I'm back on guard duty when we were at the Kage summit. Flashback. All the Kages were in the meeting room discussing on what to do for the war. Each Kage had their bodyguards hiding high above them, all except Naruto. The blonde decided to stand outside of the room and watch the hall. After a few seconds, the blonde would stomp around a bit. He kept getting impatient of how long this meeting was actually taking. Before they ever came here, Tsunade was determining on whom to take with her to the summit. Her first choice was Shizen, of course, since that was her assistant. When it came down to the last one, she couldn't think of whom to take. In her office, Sakura, Naruto, Kakashi, Yamato, and Guy stood around. The Busta Hokage looked at each and every one of them and thought deeply of whom to take. It was real quiet, but that didn't last long, as Naruto volunteered himself. Now, he's stuck here standing at the entrance of the meeting room. A sigh escaped the blonde's lips. This is taking forever, he complained. A light chuckle came from behind him. You sure haven't changed a bit, a feminine voice said. Naruto turned around to see a familiar face and smiled. Temari? Shouldn't you be in there? The blonde woman lightly shook her head. I thought you could use some company. After all, I could see that you were bored since you kept walking back and forth. Naruto lifted his right arm up and scratched the back of his head. Oops. He chuckled. Plus, I never got to actually thank you for rescuing Dara. Not once, but twice. Back at the Konoha invasion, when you beat him, you opened his eyes and realized that he had people that actually cared for him. He's been so calm and relaxed since then. Naruto lightly smiled, while listening to the blonde, and when you saved him from the Akatsuki. Not only did Granny Chio sacrifice herself to bring him back, but if it wasn't for you, I don't think we would have retrieved him at all. Temari backed the blonde up away from being seen from the people in the meeting room and placed her hands on the blonde's shoulder, as she gave him a seductive look. For that she slid her arms up to where she wrapped them around his neck and closed the gap between them slowly. Thank you. Now are you two? The sister of the Kazekage closed her eyes as she tilted her head a bit, while Naruto was pretty shocked to see Temari coming onto him. His brain registered the moment and reacted, as he wrapped his arms around her waist. He closed his eyes too, as the two blondes' lips were just a mere inch from each other. End of flashback. Naruto sighed, as his arms came unfolded and rested on his sides again. Instead, he brought his hands up slightly and slid them into his pockets. His head hung low a bit and stared down at the ground. Another sigh came from him, but then a scream came from within the store. He quickly turned around and was gone in an instant. The blonde walked around looking for the source of the scream. He knew who it was since he found Koda, Alice, and Ray all together helping the child look for some clothing first, but due to the scream, the three of them worried of what happened to Yuki. Naruto found himself now standing in front of an entrance, which led to the changing rooms. He never came upon this the first time he was here, but he walked in and the first thing he saw was a couple of corpses lying around. Shit. I should have scanned the building first before letting them go off. Looking around, he saw some of the doors open. Some of the rooms were empty, while some of them had blood and organs in them. His eyes fixed themselves on one room, which he could see someone in there. The door was slightly open and yet, there was no sign of blood or anything. He walked over to it quietly, and placed his hand on the door. Slowly, he pushed the door open and walked in. His eyes slightly widened, as he was looking at something he hadn't been expecting. Yuki stood before him wearing a pair of short jean shorts and a dark green tank top, which seemed a bit short since it showed her belly and not to mention that it was a bit tight to where her breasts were highly noticeable. Naruto blushed lightly, as Yuki smiled at him. So you do have a weak side, she said. The blonde just stood there, while his eyes kept glancing at her tits. Yuki caught him and smiled even more. You like what you see? She asked. Naruto began to swear to himself in his mind, damn it, pervy sage. I'm really starting to pick up his traits more. Yuki crossed her arms and grabbed the shoulder straps, as she slid them down her shoulders. Naruto quickly placed his hands over hers to prevent her from continuing. Yuki tilted her head a bit and gave him an innocent look. What's wrong? Did you want to help me instead? Is that why you stopped me? Naruto just looked at her and lightly shook his head. Why did you scream? Yuki frowned slightly, seeing that he was trying to avoid her actions, because of the mess around here. I don't know why I screamed actually, but it seemed like my body did on its own. A sweat formed on the back of the blonde's head. He then examined her up and down her body, which she blushed lightly, seeing that he was basically checking her out. His eyes then looked her in the eyes. Find a different shirt, he said, as he turned his back to her so that he could leave. Yuki got herself lost by looking at his strange eyes. She thought they were beautiful, but then she shook her head. What? Why? She asked. The blonde remained standing there and didn't turn to face her. It's too revealing. Eh? Yuki cocked an eyebrow and stared at the back of the blonde's head. You're starting to sound like my father. If the blonde didn't have his back facing her, she would have seen the light smile on his face. Well, we're in an all-out war here and you want to wear that? This isn't your normal world anymore. Plus, if we ended up running into a group of living, they'll certainly try to take you, even though they probably would even if you weren't wearing that. Not to mention, I don't want you wearing that around the others. Surely you don't want to see that little girl see you wearing that, would you? That would be a bad example. Yuki's eyes were widened from listening to his little speech, but she narrowed them and smiled. You really remind me of my dad. This time, the blonde turned around to face her. See, my dad would always be on me of what I would do. Flashback. Bye, Dad, Yuki called out, just before she opened the door to leave for school. Yuki. The teen stopped before she opened the door and turned around to see her dad. Yes, father? She asked, as she saw the disappointed look on his face. Her father is a light-colored man that was pretty lazy, but he deeply cared for his daughter. He wore a pair of glasses and wore a robe colored dark blue and green with checkerboard-like patterns. The waist of it was tied to keep it on securely, and he also wore a pair of dark gray slippers. He pointed down at her, but she didn't follow his point. Button that up. Yuki then looked down and saw that her blouse was open to reveal a lot of cleavage. She looked back up at him, but it's hot outside. If I wear it buttoned up, I'm going to get exhausted from the heat. Her father's eyes narrowed. Sweetie. I understand, but you're showing too much. You're making yourself look like a girl with a lot of needs. Yuki sighed. But Dad, what else can I do? It's so hot outside. She whined. Suddenly, her father walked away, leaving his daughter in a confused state. Shortly though, he came back with a bottle of water and handed it to her. Simple. Just take this to cool off. Yuki took it and smiled. So you want me to make it worse by pouring this on me to cool me down? Her father laughed. Now you're just being a smartass. Yuki kept her smile on, as she placed the bottle down and buttoned the rest of her blouse up. She picked the bottle up and opened the door, as she glanced back at her father with a smile. Thanks, Dad, she said, as she walked out and closed the door behind her. End of flashback. Naruto kept a straight face on, while Yuki actually had a small smile on. I loved my dad so much, but I don't know where he is, she said, as her smile slowly turned into a sad frown. What does your dad do? Well, I don't exactly know. When it comes to work, he usually works in his office room and he never lets me in. I've never seen it before, and when I'm home alone, it's always locked. Must be a big secret. Why, yeah. An awkward silence came upon the two that only lasted for a split second. Wait here, Naruto said, as he walked out of the changing room. Yuki crossed her arms across her chest to prevent them from standing out so much. Her face was a bit saddened and somewhat happy. Not only is he sexy, but he even listens. He cares for us, and even though he hardly knows us, I feel as if I can talk to him about anything. A smile came upon her face, as she quietly giggled to herself. His eyes, I've never seen eyes like those before, but they're so beautiful. She leaned her back against the wall and slid down to where she sat down on the little corner seat. Suddenly, the blonde stepped in again with a shirt in his hands. The shirt is short sleeve that's colored dark red, but not only did he bring a shirt, he brought back a bra with matching panties. She looked up at him to see a light embarrassing blush across his cheeks. Yuki couldn't help but laugh at the blonde. Why did you bring me those? She laughed. Naruto's blush began to darken lightly. I thought you could use some clean undergarments. I already changed into a different set. She laughed, but then stopped, as she got up and went up to him. She grabbed the bottom of the tank top she wore. I can show you if you like, she said seductively, as she began to lift it up her body. Naruto began to curse at himself in his head again and felt his little friend waking up. He shook his head and handed her the shirt. Just change, he said as he walked out. Yuki pouted. I was so close, she shouted quietly. Naruto walked back out to his post and kept an eye out of whatever would show up. His bored expression had managed to take back over after what had happened back at the changing rooms. Hey. Naruto? The blonde turned around to see the short, chubby boy. Kota was now wearing a pair of camouflage cargo shorts with a black t-shirt and a pair of white sneakers. What is it? The blonde came to a stop, trying to remember if he had heard his name from the others or not. It's Kota. Oh, you're the one that said that Shido would always pick on you, right? Yeah. Why would a teacher want to pick on a student? The blonde then began to remember how he was a child and how he got picked on or hated by teachers in the academy. Well, Mr. Shido was a teacher of mine, and when class was over. Flashback. Kota was sitting in his desk even though class was over. When the bell rang, the door to the class was closed. Only him, a couple of other students, and Mr. Shido were inside. The students grabbed a desk and surrounded the chubby boy and all began to make fun of him. Why don't you ever work out? You need to quit eating like a pig and drop that fat. If you learned how to quit being and if you weren't such a fat ass, we wouldn't be here making fun of you. But you're so weak and you just absorb it all in. Footsteps drew closer to the group, as everyone looked up to see Mr. Shido, now Kota. You know they're right. If you weren't so weak, they wouldn't be making fun of you. But you choose to be the weak, lazy, fat ass that you are. The students began to smile. Yeah, fat, they all said at once. Kota just laid his head down on his desk wishing that they would just leave him alone. End of flashback. It would happen every day. I even tried telling the principal, and she even spoke with Mr. Shido herself. But he would tell her that he has no clue what she was talking about. And since then, they'd been pushing me around physically and kept calling me a crybaby for telling on them even though it didn't work. Naruto felt bad for the boy. Kota. How long has this been going on? About a year. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. A year? And you've been dealing with them? Wow. I'm pretty impressed. I used to be picked on all the time when I was younger. People always avoided me. No one ever wanted to be my friend. They all accused me of doing something that I didn't do. Really? Kota asked. Yeah. But I dealt with it, and when time passed on, I ended up making plenty of friends. However, I can see that you want revenge. The blonde walked to him and placed a hand on his head. When it comes down to when we see him again, and if he's being taken down by them, you're going to have to kill him. Kota smiled widely. I've been planning on that for quite some time now. Okay. We're ready to go back. Naruto looked past the blonde to see Ray wearing a pair of dark blue short gym shorts, not too short, but just short, with a white t-shirt and black sneakers. He then saw little Alice wearing dark pink pants with a dark purple shirt that had a picture of a dog's face on the front of it. She also wore a pair of black shoes and she had 3 blue bracelets around her left wrists. They didn't say anything, but the little girl found them pretty and just wanted to wear them. Yuki was next to them wearing the same jean shorts with the red shirt that he picked out for her. He saw her smile and lightly smiled back at her to see that she chose his picking. Kota turned around and looked at Yuki to see that the jean shorts were hugging tightly onto her bosom, that it showed her curves. The chubby boy blushed. Okay. Are you all ready to head back? Naruto asked. Yeah. Just one more thing though, Yuki said, as an evil grin came upon her face. Time, 1:28 p.m. Takashi sat in the living room with Siko, Kaji, and Saya. Shizuka ended up going back to sleep since she didn't like being waken up. It was just quiet throughout the living room. Nothing came to any of their mind of what to talk about. Saya sat with her leg crossed over the other, while Siko sat on the couch and just stared at the TV that was turned off. Takashi sat next to her and leaned forward so that he could just stare down at the floor. Kaji, on the other hand, was just lying on the floor. The door opened, which the three heard, and looked toward the hall. They heard voices, which weren't hard to pick up who they were. Ray, Alice, Yuki, and Kota came into the living room. Ray giggled just a bit and ran at Takashi. Ray sat on the boy's lap, which made him blush. Why, you look comfortable in that, he mentioned. Ray smiled. Yeah? I can move more freely in this. Alice came in all cheery and heard barking coming down the hall. She turned to see Zeke running at her, and just when he was in reach, he jumped up at her, which she caught him and laughed. Kota jolted back to the safe where he had put the guns back and went into his little world. Yuki came in with a big smile on her face and sat next to Saya. The pink-haired teen was confused of why she was so happy. What's got you all so happy? Oh, nothing, she said. Naruto finally came in and everyone looked at him. They all started to laugh at him since he had carried all their old clothes back. He had a bunch in both his arms, while the rest of them were sitting on his head. The blonde lifted his arms up, which caused the clothes to fall from his hold, and then leaned his head forward, which caused those clothes to fall. He saw that they were all laughing at him, but he couldn't help but smile a bit. Oh wait, Yuki said, as she walked up to the blonde. Naruto's smile turned into his straight look. Yuki smiled at him and stared into his eyes, as she snaked her arm around him and reached up to his neck. She slid her hand into the back of his shirt, and pulled out her black and red lace bra. You forgot this, she said, as she dropped it to the pile. Everyone began to laugh again, as Yuki went back to sit next to Saya. Naruto stood there with a faint blush on his face. Luckily the others didn't see. Okay, enough. Are the rest of you ready? The blonde asked, but no one answered since they were still laughing. Naruto's right eye began to twitch and got tired of waiting, as he walked out of the household. The blonde walked to the gate and stopped, as he heard the others calling him. Wait, Naruto. We were just having a little fun, Takashi said. The blonde turned his head and looked to the side to see Takashi, Saya, Siko, and Kaji joining him. I know. I was just getting annoyed. Annoyed of what? Saya asked. Annoyed of you for not coming when I asked if you were ready, he answered, as he slid open the gate and walked past it with the other four right behind him. Once they were on the outside, the blonde closed the gate behind them and saw that the four were just staring up at the wall of dead. Wow. You made this that one night? Kaji asked. Okay. Just how do you expect us to get over this wall if we're going? Saya was cut off, as she was now in the air. She looked down and saw Siko and Takashi still in their spot. Looking to her right, she saw the blonde holding on to her. In just a split second after finding out she got up so high, she was now on the ground, along with Kaji. She dusted herself off. Just whom the hell do you think she stopped to see that the blonde wasn't in sight? Naruto appeared back on the other side to see a shocked Siko and Takashi. He walked in between them and wrapped an arm around their waists. Hold on. And in a split second, they were on the other side. Naruto let them go and walked on ahead to lead them to the store. They all looked at each other, but decided not to ask any questions and followed him. A few minutes later, the group approached the store. Siko and the others looked around the scene to see a total mess. Is this what you meant? Takashi asked. Naruto kept walking ahead. Yeah. This was an all-out war. Wow. It's like a bloodbath here, Kaji mentioned. Come on. Enough looking around, just please hurry up, Naruto said. They all thought they had enough examining anyway and walked past the blonde. Naruto turned around watching the outside to make sure there were no intruders. Time skip, 15 minutes later. Kaji saw Naruto just standing outside keeping watch and decided to take this chance to know his savior a bit more. Kaji now wore a pair of black khaki pants, black and gray shoes, and a dark blue short-sleeve shirt. He still wore his glasses and was now carrying his previous outfit. He approached the blonde and realized how serious he was keeping watch. His body was so still, no sign of movement. His legs were slightly separate, but mainly stood up straight. He walked up and stopped next to the blonde, while looking outside like him. So, you're obviously not from here. Where exactly are you from? Kaji asked. Kaji looked at the blonde to see that he had his arms crossed and that he had that same bored expression on his face. The wind picked up a bit, which blew his hair to the side. I'm from a different world. As I told someone before, your world is completely different. So a different world, huh? Do you know how you ended up here? The blonde shook his head. All I know is that I woke up in an alley. That's it. Do you remember anything from your world? I do, but I can only speak of so little of it. Oh. Well, what was your world like? My world, the majority of people, including myself, grew up to become shinobi. Ninja? Yes. We were always at war and I was a part of it. There have been 3 shinobi world wars, but then there was this man named Madara. He's a part of an organization called the Akatsuki. Their goal was to capture these beasts called bijus. There are 9 of them, and they've captured 7. One day, we were called to a meeting. We? Oh. Yeah, I'm from a place called the Elemental Nations. To be more exact, the Fire Country in the village of Konoha. Now, there are 4 other lands. The Land of Earth has Iwagakure. The Land of Lightning has Kumogakure. Land of Water has Kirigakure. And the last one, the Land of Wind, has Sanagakure. Each of these villages has a leader that's ranked Kage. We were all divided equally in order to create a balance to our world. Okay. So, when it came to the meeting, was it just the Kages? You're somewhat right. It was the Kage from their village, with 2 bodyguards. I happened to be one of those guards for our leader. Anyway, we were all gathered at a place called the 3 Wolves, which is where the Land of Iron resides. The Land of Iron didn't have shinobi, but instead they had samurai, and instead of a Kage, there was a general named Mifune. He called an alliance, and wanted to get all of us on the same page to stop the Akatsuki. As the meeting went on, Madara decided to make an appearance. He started talking about this plan of his and demanded the 2 remaining bijus, but we simply didn't hand them over. That was when he declared the 4th Great Ninja World War. A 4th war just because he couldn't get these 2 beasts. What were these beasts like? Well, these beasts were special. As you know, there are 9 of them. Each one of them had special abilities. They had their own names, and depending on what number they were, they had that many tails exactly. For instance, Ichibi is the 1-tailed beast, Nibi the 2 tails, Sanbai the 3 tails, Yambi the 4 tails, Gobi the 5 tails, Rokubi the 6 tails, Nanabai the 7 tails, Hachibi the 8 tails, and finally, Kyubi the 9 tails, which is the strongest of them all. Each of these beasts was sealed in a person. And since the Akatsuki has captured 7 of them, they captured that person and extracted the beast from within, which ended up killing the container. That's awful. Why were they after those beasts? They're after them because, once they capture all 9 of them, that's when they can merge them all together to form the Jubi. Jubi? Yes. Known as the 10 tails. All 9 of the tailed beasts are but portions divided from the Jubi. Madara wants to bring back the Jubi so that he can become the Jinchuriki of it, and have the entire world in his control. Jinchuriki? Jinchuriki is the container of the Bija. I see. So, the Hachibi and Kyubi are the ones he's after? Yes. Who are the containers of those tailed beasts? The Hachibi is sealed into a friend of mine and a trainer of mine. His name's Killer Bee. Killer Bee? What's with that name? To be honest, I don't know. He's actually a really cool guy. Just that, he raps and that it can be a bit strange, but at times I tried it out. It didn't come out too great, but for some reason, he liked it. Kaji laughed a bit and smiled. He sounds fun to be around. Naruto chuckled a bit. He is. What was his town like? He lived in Kumo. His brother is the Raikage. Raikage must be the leader of that village. What's the other Kages? Well, there's Tsuchikage of Iwa. He's a short old man that happens to have back problems. There's Kazakage of Suna. He's a very good friend of mine that used to be the container of the Ichibi. Wait, the Kazakage used to be a container? How is he still alive then? Someone from his village named Chio sacrificed her life to bring him back to life. I ended up bringing his body back, and that was when she decided to bring him back. Oh. Anyway, there's the Raikage, which happens to be a reckless guy at times. Mizukage of Kiri, might I say, is a beauty. And then there's the Hokage of my village. She's a drinker and a gambler, but she knows what she's doing. I see. So who's the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi? Naruto didn't say a word and didn't want to tell him, so he decided to change the subject. So, Kaji, how did you end up to be in Shido's group? Kaji wasn't expecting the blonde to change the subject, but thought that he heard quite a bit of him and decided to tell him his side. Well, I was in the school with a couple of other students. Flashback. Kaji was still in his classroom gathering his books after he heard the screaming from the guy that was using the microphone. The other students didn't waste time after they heard it, and all made a run for it. Kaji! A student called out. Kaji gathered the rest of his books and turned to the source of the voice to see his friend Shin. Not going to describe him since he's only going to be seen in this scene, with some other student. I'm coming, he said, as he rushed to them. The three of them were the last ones out of the classroom and stopped outside the doorway to figure out which way everyone went. They glanced right then left, but then they heard groaning sounds coming from their right. Glancing to their right, they saw a group of people coming towards them. They were pretty pale looking and they had blood covering throughout their body. What the hell? Shin asked. Why is there blood all over them? The other student asked. I don't know, Shin answered, as he faced the group. Hey, are you all right? No answer came from the group, but all they did was just groan and reach out when they got closer. Hey, what's the person ahead of the group grabbed Shin's arm and held it up, as it bit down on his arm. Shin screamed out in pain, while Kaji and the other student were shocked. The others came up to join the person and all grabbed a part of Shin, as they all munched on him. What the student shouted, but one of them walked to him faster than usual and grabbed him by the head. It then bit down on his shoulder, which he then screamed out in pain. Kaji was panicking and decided to run the opposite way. He turned around the corner and quickly ran down the stairway. Once he was halfway down the stairs, he turned to run down the next flight, but he ended up slipping on the first step he took on them and tumbled down to the bottom. His books were all scattered around the floor, but they were close to him. He weakly gathered his books again and got up to one knee. A shoe was in his sight, which he then looked up to see Mr. Shido with Yuki, Taniuchi, Tsunoda, Miura, Kawamoto, Yamada, and Kurakami. The teacher held out his hand, which Kaji took it and was helped back up to his feet. Come with us, Kaji. We're going to get out of here. Kaji bowed his head. Thank you, Mr. Shido. End of flashback. Naruto looked at Kaji. So he helped you up and that's what made you want to join him? Kaji looked at the blonde's eyes. Well, yeah. I had no one else to go with, so I thought that if I went with them that we would be fine. I see. Naruto replied, as he buried his hands into his pockets. Might I ask what's with your eyes? I've never seen anyone with those before. Naruto chuckled a bit and looked back outside. Perhaps another time I'll tell you. Kaji looked back outside for a second and then back at the blonde. So, who was the host of the Kyuubi? Naruto's body tensed, which Kaji then began to register it. His eyes slightly widened and turned his body around so that his whole front was facing the blonde. Why, you're the host? Naruto nodded yes. The blonde placed a hand on his stomach. The Kyuubi is sealed in me, but I haven't heard from him lately. Wow. How long have you had it sealed in you? Naruto looked up at the sky with his eyes half open. Ever since I was born. Kaji's eyes widened. What? Yeah. My dad was the Hokage back then, and when he was helping my mom give birth to me. Now back then, my mom was the host of the Kyuubi. So, they had to find a secret place to give birth. Why? Because when you give birth, the seal that keeps the Kyuubi sealed weakens, which gives it the opportunity to break free. So, right when I came out, an intruder broke in and used me as a hostage. The intruder was Madara and he held me hostage just so he can have the chance to take the Kyuubi. My father didn't know what to do, but of course, he saved me and got us out of there. He took me home thinking that it would be safe there, but since he saved me, Madara took my mother and freed the Kyuubi. He managed to gain control of it, and he teleported the Ninetales and himself to my village. That night was when the Kyuubi attacked the village. But later my father managed to stop Madara from controlling it, but that was when the Kyuubi was free on its own. The Kyuubi was just about to wipe the village completely, but my dad teleported it with him to a more open area. That was when he brought Mom and me. He realized he couldn't stop the Kyuubi and both my mom and dad decided to sacrifice their lives by sealing it in me. Kaji couldn't think of anything to say since his savior lost both his parents in order to protect everyone else, and ever since they sealed the Kyuubi in me, as I grew up, people hated me. They called me a monster and anything else you can think of. Naruto continued. Why? You didn't do anything. Because I have the Kyuubi inside me. They say it's my fault my father and mother died. That's awful. But if you were just a baby when all that happened, how did you find this out? A good teacher of mine. What was his name? Jiraiya. He was known as one of the legendary Sannin. What was he like? Naruto then looked at Kaji. How about we talk about the rest later? I think I've told you enough for now. Oh. Ugh, okay. I'm glad that I got to know you a bit better now, Kaji said, as he smiled. Naruto just kept looking at him and actually smiled back. Hey. Kaji and the blonde turned to see Takashi, Saya, and Siko. Takashi was now wearing black jeans, black sneakers, a white short-sleeved shirt, and the same jacket he wore with his school uniform. Saya wore lime green shorts, turquoise tank top, and yellow low-cut sneakers. Siko wore light gray khaki shorts that stopped just a bit over her knees, a dark purple sheer blouse, and her same black battle boots with heels. Everyone held on to their old outfit. You're all done? The blonde asked. Yeah, Takashi answered. Naruto looked back at Kaji. What we discuss stays between us, he said quietly, but apparently not quiet enough. Kaji nodded, while the others had a questioning look on their faces. What did you talk about? Saya asked. Naruto started to walk back to their household. Don't worry about it. They all looked at him, while Takashi and Saya went up to Kaji. What did you two talk about? Saya asked. Siko respected that the blonde didn't want to tell them and decided to go join him, while Takashi and Saya bugged Kaji about whatever it was they talked about. Just when she was about to talk to him, she saw that he came to a stop. She came to his side and looked at him. Why did you stop? She asked, as Takashi and the others stopped just a bit behind them. Naruto looked ahead at the road, but then his eyes scanned the buildings to the right. A large group of shady people, wearing clothing that covered pretty much their entire body, except their eyes, came out from an alley. They all had some sort of blade, whether it be a dagger, machete, katana, you name it. The group consisted of about 20 of them, as they all came up to the blonde's group and surrounded them. They all looked around, except for Naruto since he was just staring at the person that stood in front of him. Well. Looks like we got a bunch of kids that are lost, the one in front of Naruto said. The blonde easily picked it up that this guy is the leader of them. Obviously it was a man due to the fact that his body looks well built, and that he stood a bit taller than the blonde. Naruto, as usual, stood there with a bored look on his face. The leader of the large group tilted his head and examined the blonde. You look as if you're high and mighty. Naruto blinked once and continued to walk. I have no time for this, he said in a cool tone. One of the shady people went up to him and grabbed the blonde by his wrist, which Naruto broke the grip and placed his hand against the person's stomach. Shinra Tensei, he said quietly to where only the person could hear it, and was instantly sent flying back. The entire group watched in shock as one of their own was sent soaring, but then they quickly glanced back at the blonde. What the hell was that? The leader shouted, as he looked the blonde in the eyes. And what's with those eyes? Siko, Takashi, and Saya then remembered that the blonde has been with them for a couple days now and not once have they asked anything about them. What do you want? The blonde asked. Well, we were going to capture you and have you work for us, the leader pointed at the blonde. But how about you join us and leave these weak kids? Siko and the others' eyes widened. You can't just make a proposal and take him from us, Saya shouted. Why not? He seems to be the reason why you're all alive. Plus, he deserves to be in a group to where everyone can fight. Not with a bunch of kids that can't do anything, the leader said. Takashi clenched his fists, but Naruto walked up to the leader to where they were just a foot apart. Tell you what. If your buddies here can manage to land a hit on me, then I'll join you. The leader grinned behind his mask. All right everyone, you heard him. Siko and the others backed away to where they were now standing outside the circle. Naruto was now the only one that's completely surrounded by the shady group of people. Every single one of them charged at the blonde. The first two both attempted to stab him, but he easily caught their wrists and slammed them together. Another set of two came in, but they both wielded swords. They both started to swing at him, but he swiftly and easily dodged them all. I said if you could hit me, but it looks like you're trying to kill me, the blonde mentioned, as he held out his right arm, while a metal rod formed in his hand. He quickly blocked one of the incoming strikes with his rod and kicked the other person hard on his chest. If you want to try and kill me, then I'll just kill every single one of you. Naruto broke his own block and attempted to stab the other one. Stop. The blonde stopped, which his weapon was just a mere inch from stabbing the person's chest. The man he was about to kill was standing straight up with his sword held back and his eyes showed fear since he was just about to be killed. Enough. I don't want anyone getting killed, the leader said, as the group all backed away from the blonde. What's wrong? That didn't last long at all, Naruto mentioned. The leader chuckled. What's your name, kid? The blonde grinned. Naruto Namikaze. All right, Naruto Namikaze. We'll meet again some other time, the leader said, as he grabbed a ball from his pocket and threw it down on the ground, which made a huge smoke screen. A few seconds later, the smoke died down to show that they were all gone. Siko and the others came up to him. Were you really going to join them if they actually managed to lay a hit on you? Saya asked. Naruto kept his stare to where the leader once was and then decided to continue the path home. No. Chapter 6, Rampage. Time, 7:28 p.m. Everyone was enjoying their relaxing night. Shizuka was actually washing everyone's clothes that they wore before their new outfits. Alice was playing around with little Zeke by chasing him throughout the household. Kota, Takashi, Rei, and pretty much everyone else except for one person were sitting in the living room chatting with each other. Naruto was standing out on the balcony only wearing the jeans he picked out from the store and his sandals. Shizuka was washing his upper clothing since she claimed they were filthy. The blonde actually saw in fact that they weren't messy at all, which is why he got the impression that she just wanted him to walk around shirtless. Before he came out to the balcony, he could feel everyone's attention was on him. When he came out here, he could hear them talking about him and how he was well built. He leaned forward against the railing and looked out at all the buildings. His body began to heat up, as he was starting to feel a bit light. Damn it. Why is this happening now? He thought to himself. He stood back up and placed a hand on his forehead. His hand instantly got warmer than usual after feeling how warm his head was. His forehead began to sweat, and he could feel himself getting hotter. Turning around, he looked inside to see everyone still talking to each other. He slowly made his way back inside, which caught everyone's attention. Are you okay? Takashi asked. Naruto slowly took a couple steps forward and came to a stop. Why yeah. I'll be. His eyes closed, as he fell to the ground. Naruto-san. They all shouted and rushed to him. Takashi and Siko flipped him onto his back. The blonde's mouth was partly open and his breathing was going at a quick pace. Siko placed her hand on his forehead. He's burning up. Quick! Go get a cold wet rag. Takashi called out. Yuki was the fast one to respond to the statement, and ran to the kitchen. Naruto's eyes opened and he found himself sitting in a sewage-looking place. A deep laugh echoed through the area, which he then easily picked up of who it was. He got up to his feet and began to walk forward, until he came upon a cage. I'd begun to wonder where you've been at, Naruto said. Naruto. 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 The blonde cocked an eyebrow. Why have you been so quiet this whole time? Why haven't you paid me a visit? I'm sure if you came, you would have seen me awake. Naruto clenched his fist. TCK. I've been sealed in you ever since you were born, and now that we're in a different world, you haven't paid me one visit. I'm hurt, Naruto boy. Shut up. The fox tilted its head to the side a bit, and a mischievous grin crept on its face. So? Is little Naruto getting mad? The blonde gritted his teeth and clenched his fist so hard that the palm of his hands began to bleed. The fox's grin widened, seeing the blood sliding dripping down from his fists. What's the matter? Am I really getting on your nerves? I bet you won't undo the seal and go for round 2 now that Kushin is gone. Shut up. The fox raised its head, as its eyes looked down. You're still easy to anger. Why would you tell that boy you saved about your life? You don't know these weaklings. Nothing came from the blonde, but his anger was boiling. You know, Naruto boy. We both don't know how we ended up here, but if we're going to be staying in this world, you mustn't get close to these people. Naruto's anger began to slowly die down, hearing that the fox had said something that he already knew from the start. I know. I just what? Want to protect them? Make new friends? You need to leave these people. They're nothing to worry about. You need to worry about how to get back to our world. Naruto's eyes narrowed. I know, and believe me, I want to get back to our world too. The fox lied down and rested its head on its 2 front legs, glad to see that we're on the same page here. You wouldn't happen to know why these flashbacks I'm getting hurt, would you? I'm afraid I don't. But you need to somehow maintain them from interrupting your battles. If you get another memory coming back to you and it leaves you open, whoever it may be you're going up against won't hesitate and kill you when they see the chance. Thanks for the advice, Naruto replied, as his gaze avoided from looking at the fox. Another thing, why the hell are you trying to act all cool around these insects? You're usually all sheepish and happy back in our world. Naruto crinkled his nose and pointed at the fox. Shut up. The fox began to laugh once again. Are you trying to impress these insects by your attitude? You know you could still be acting like your normal self since they're impressed by your skills. Naruto's anger began to start up again. They're not insects. The fox lifted its head up once again and glared at the blonde. Think about it. They're just normal people that can't do anything. As I said, they're insects. They're normal people. Shut up, kid. You shouldn't care about them anyway. We don't know them, and they don't know us. And as soon as we get back to our world, you'll completely forget about them. Naruto's eyes narrowed again. No. The fox growled in annoyance. Fine. If you won't leave them, then I'll make you myself one day. Just remember that, when you start getting too close to them, then I'm taking control. I've already told you. I'm not going to get close to them. Like hell you're not. Look at you. You've told a lot about yourself to that boy you saved and that purple-haired girl. That shows me that you're getting close to them. Why do you even care if I get close to them or not? Because your emotions will get the better of you to where you'll sacrifice your life for one of them. Naruto didn't say anything in response since the fox was right. If it did come down to where he got close to everyone and they were in danger, he knew that he would sacrifice himself to save them so that they could live on. The fox sighed, you see? You know I'm right, so you need to leave these worms and find a way to get us home. I know now, hurry up and do something about this fever. The fox chuckled, calm your horses, boy. I'm on it. Takashi, Siko, Kaji, and Shizuka were standing around the bed that they had placed the blonde in. He lied there with a cold wet rag sitting on his forehead. I don't know how long he's going to be out. But his fever is way too high. He just needs to rest, Shizuka mentioned. How did this start? Takashi asked. I don't know. He looked to be just fine when he was up, Shizuka answered. He did. But why did it come all of a sudden? Kaji wondered. Why don't we leave so he can rest and discuss this outside? Shizuka asked, as she walked out of the room, followed by the others. The door closed, which the blonde's eyes opened in an instant. He leaned up to see he was the only one in the room. A sigh escaped his lips. The fox is right. Kid! Change in plans, you can stay with these worms for now, but don't get close like I said. I'm going to be watching you still and trying to figure out ways to get back home. Got it? Yeah. Good, but if you think of anything having to do with returning home, speak up. The blonde looked out the window to see that it was dark out. I will. One more thing. I've seen you fight those things and it's making me wanting to see you kill more and more of them. Why don't you go out and slay some more? Will it shut you up? Possibly. Naruto threw the sheets off of him and got out of bed. Thunder roared outside, which drew the blonde's attention to the window again. Droplets of rain began to pour down, while the blonde looked down to see that he's still shirtless. He shrugged and held out his left arm, which then his sword appeared in his hand. Holding the sword out in front of him, he stared at it. How about you let me take control and slay them myself? I want to give it a shot. Damn it, Kurama. I promise, once I'm done, you won't hear another word from me for the rest of the night. I just want to bathe in blood. Naruto's grip on the handle of his sword tightened fine. The blonde's eyes closed and opened after a second to reveal his now reddened eyes. His pupil was slit, while the rings in his eyes still remained to show his dojutsu. His hair stuck out more, and the whisker marks on his cheeks darkened. His fangs grew, while his other teeth sharpened. The now possessed Naruto quietly laughed and walked to the window. I'm going to take the window so that we won't have to go past those worms to get out. Naruto found himself in the sewage place again and just sat in front of the cage. That's fine. The fox opened the window and jumped out and landed on the street, going to be using Fox or Kurama since he's in control of Naruto's body for the time being. The landing caused him to land in a crouching position, but he slowly got back to standing straight up. His arms were resting on his sides, while the sword in his left hand was pointing downward and being dragged, as he walked up to the giant wall of dead. The rain began to pick up, as it poured down on him, which caused some of his hair to go down. The fox looked up at the wall and grinned. As bad as I want to destroy this wall and have those things overrun this joint, I'll respect the fact that you're also sheltering here. So whenever you do leave, we'll destroy this wall so that they can die here. Naruto had his eyes closed and still sat in front of the cage, but didn't say anything. The fox looked up at the dark clouds above, as red chakra formed below his feet. The red chakra shot up, which caused him to rise up as well. A grin came to the fox's face, while the chakra stopped at the top of the wall. He took a step and now stood on top of the wall. Looking down at the other end, he jumped down and once again landed in a crouching position. He got back to standing up straight again and began his path, out to seek for them. The spot he landed on ended up to form a small crater. Kurama began to laugh deeply. Tonight, I'll show you a true disaster. Time, 8:34 p.m. Everyone was back in the living room and chatting about whatever they could think of. Earlier, Shizuka managed to finish washing the clothes, so she placed them in the dryer. Alice was still running around playing with Zeke. The others, just as I said, were sitting in the living room. However, Rei and Saya were starting to get sleepy. Rei was sitting next to Takashi and rested her head on his shoulder. Saya got up, decided to call it a night, and went to her room that she shared with Rei and Shizuka. Kota, of course, was fidgeting with the guns. Kaji was lying on the floor once again, while Yuki was sitting with Siko and kept talking about Naruto. Siko could see that she was like a fangirl of his. I think I'll go check on him, the purple-haired beauty said, as she got up from the couch. Wait, I'm coming too, Yuki said, as she quickly caught up to Siko. It didn't take long, as the two came up to the door that Naruto was resting in. Siko opened the door, and that instant, they both saw that he was gone. They rushed in. He's gone, Yuki stated. Siko looked around, but then felt a breeze. She looked at the window to see that it was open. He left. Come on, we need to tell the others, the purple teen said. Yuki closed the window and ran out the room to catch up with Siko. Siko came back into the living room and stopped in the hall just outside of it. Naruto's gone, she stated. Everyone turned to look at her in an instant. What? Takashi nearly shouted. Yuki came up next to Siko and saw that she had already told them since they were all looking at her. We went to go check on him and he wasn't there. The window was open though, which means that he obviously left, Yuki said. Why? It's storming out, and it's going to be harder for him to see, Kaji mentioned. I don't know, but I'm going to go look for him, Siko mentioned, as she grabbed her wooden sword that was leaning against the wall and ran to the door. Takashi and Rei got up to and grabbed their weapon that was leaning against the same wall that Siko's weapon was. Kaji hopped up to his feet and also ran for the door, but before he was out of sight from the others, he turned to look at Yuki. Stay here with the others. Tell Ms. Marikawa where we went if she asks, he said. Kaji, wait. The teen looked at Kota and saw him coming up to him with a gun. Here. Take this, Kota said, as he handed Kaji the Desert Eagle with a couple of clips. Oh, also Kota quickly ran back to the guns and grabbed the Ithaca Riot shotgun, along with a little box containing ammo. He came back to Kaji and handed them to him. Give this to Takashi. Kaji placed the Desert Eagle in his pocket, along with the clips, and took the rest. Thanks, he said, and ran outside. Kaji ran out the gate and saw that the others were standing in front of the wall. Hey Takashi, here, Kaji called out. Takashi turned to Kaji and saw that he was carrying firearms. Kaji handed him the shotgun and the box of ammo. Thanks. Kaji looked up at the wall. How are we going to get past this? Takashi looked around and then he saw that this wall was lined up right in the middle of two gates. We can climb those gates and get around it. Here's a picture of what it looks like, sort of, with the dotted lines resembling the wall and the L resembling the gates. LL. Let's go then, Siko said. Bah ha 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 ha. Kurama laughed evilly as he sliced a walker in half. The fox ended up deep within the city. Two giant ones came after him like a couple of bulls. Kurama glanced at them and grinned as he slammed his hand on the street. Below the giants, a giant red chakra hand came from the ground and grabbed them both. Kurama held out the same hand he slammed on the street and clenched it into a fist, as the chakra one did too, which the two giants were now smashed up into bits and pieces. Kurama's smile widened to show that Naruto's teeth were now sharp ones and looked around to see hundreds of more walkers coming after him. Red chakra formed around his arms, as he swung his arms around, which the red chakra extended and took on an arm. The chakra arms bashed against several of them and the fists pounded down on a few of them. Even though we're in this world, I can still enjoy crushing something, Kurama shouted and withdrew the chakra arms back into him. He crouched down and jumped high up into the air. Looking down at the massive horde, he grinned and pointed the palm of his right hand down at them. You will all give me the joy of blowing every single one of you to pieces. A reddish and purplish colored ball of chakra formed in his palm and slowly grew to the size of an Otama raisin gan. Suffer, the fox said, and fired the ball of chakra down at the horde. Once it hit down on them, a massive explosion completely covered a 100-yard radius and expanded 100 feet in the air. Once the explosion died down, Kurama lowered himself back down on the street and looked around to see body parts all over the place. The street now had a red color to it instead of black. He knew that the rain would wash it out, but he enjoyed the scene before him. Groaning sounds echoed the streets, as a grin came upon his face again, more and more. Ha ha! Kurama laughed and with immense speed, ran to the sound. In just a split second, he found himself standing at an entrance that led to a parking lot, which was completely covered with walkers. Kurama laughed insanely and charged into the horde with the sword tightly in his grip. Takashi and the others came upon the clothing store that they had picked their new outfits from. However, the explosion earlier caught their attention and completely left them blank. What was that? Rei asked. Takashi was way lost. I have no clue. Kaji knew exactly who it was. That's Naruto, all right. But what the hell was that he just did? Siko usually wasn't the type to show that she was scared, but after seeing something like that, she was starting to get that feeling. We need to go toward that explosion, Kaji mentioned. The others looked at him with, are you crazy? Look, are you kidding? Did you not see that? Rei asked. I did see it, but I'm not kidding. That explosion is Naruto's doing. Naruto? How the hell can he do that? Takashi asked. Kaji's eyes narrowed and promised Naruto that he wouldn't tell anyone, but he knew that they wouldn't go toward it without knowing what caused it. Not to mention, they wouldn't go without hearing an explanation from him how he knows. Listen, I'm sure Naruto will tell you everything if we just go get him. Takashi and Siko then remembered that when they were at the clothing store that him and Naruto had a chat about something. fair enough. I'm going to confront him one last time, Takashi said. Ha 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 ha. Kurama laughed, as he decapitated one of them and then shot a chakra blast at a group of them. This is what I needed. I will kill anything in my sight. Mall rooftop. A small woman with short, light brown hair and blue eyes looked down at the parking lot to see the massacre going on down below. The front of her hair is pushed to the right side of her face, partially obscuring her right eye. She wears a female police uniform of the Tokunosu Higashi Police Station, which consists of a white shirt, a black tie, a blue jacket, and a blue skirt. She also wears a green band around her left arm with 2 white stripes on it and gold earrings in the shape of stars. What's going on down there? She asked herself. Asami. The girl turned around to see a man wearing a black torque, white shirt, work boots, and a black jacket with black pants. What's wrong, Shimada? What the hell's going on? Shimada asked, as he came next to her and looked down below, along with Asami. I have no clue. I've never seen anything like this before. A man with short, light hair, wearing glasses, and earrings came up next to Shimada. He also has a goatee and some other light facial hair. He wears a large, unzipped jacket over his shirt, tan cargo pants, work boots, and fingerless gloves. He also wears a pair of headphones around his neck and a necklace with a skull on it. What's going on down there? Shimada looked to his left. Hiro. We have no idea. Asami looked at Hiro. Where's Matsushima? A woman with short black hair and light blue eyes came next to Asami. Right here, she said, as she looked down at the scene below. Matsushima wore the exact same outfit that Asami wore. Do you know what's going on down there? Asami asked. No. I just know that it's someone that isn't normal, Matsushima answered. The 4 of them all looked back down and saw a blur of red. Is that the person? Hiro asked. The red blur expanded and engulfed the walkers around it. It has to be, Shimada said. Kurama cleared the blur and looked around to see all the walkers scattered all over the lot. Ha ha. This is too easy. The ground Kurama stood on began to shake a bit. He looked down at it, and then toward the way he came from to see several of the giants charging at him. A grin crept upon Kurama's face. You can't do a thing to me. Kurama held out his arm and had his right palm facing the incoming giants. Another ball of chakra formed in his palm and grew. The giants were now about 50 yards from the possessed blonde, while Kurama smirked and fired the ball of chakra. It caused another massive explosion when it made impact with the giant up front. Kurama stood there with a grin on his face, but the ground below him began to crack open, which he looked down to see an arm coming out to grab him. He easily jumped aside to avoid it, but saw the ground opening to see more of those giants coming out. So you can come from the ground too? It's like you're coming from hell. Kurama charged at them with the sword tightly in his grip. He flipped the sword to where he was holding the sword backwards, as red chakra formed around the sword. Jumping in the air a bit, he dashed down at them and sliced his sword once, as he then appeared behind them. His eyes closed, as he stood up straight with the same grin on his face. The giants coming from the ground all came to a stop, while their bodies split in half. Kurama turned to look at all the corpses lying around and started laughing. What the hell? Shimada stated. I don't know what it is, but to me, it looks like some sort of demon from hell. But whatever it is, it took care of those things like it was nothing, Hiro mentioned. Everyone couldn't quite get a good look, but then Asami quickly ran back to the door that led to the stairs. The others turned to see her leaving. Where are you going? They all asked. I'm going to go get a telescope so we can get a better look, she answered, as she opened the door and rushed off to find the device. Okay, Kurama. I think you've had enough, Naruto called out. Not a chance. The night's still early and did you not notice? Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Notice what? The people on the roof up there. They've been watching us and I can't have people seeing you like this. So I have to kill them. Naruto quickly got up to his feet, which made a minor splash from his movement. No. We're not going to kill anyone except for those creatures. Fine. Fine. Oh. How about you let me seek out those people that were pretty shady and kill them? Not yet. I actually want to find out more about them first. TCK, fine. I'm going to continue slaughtering these weaklings. Reality. Kurama looked around and saw that the rain was washing up the blood. A sigh escaped his lips. Groaning sounds started to close in, which Kurama quickly glanced to his left and saw another horde of them coming from a different path. A grin once again crept upon his face. More. He gripped the sword tightly and added his chakra to it again. More. The chakra around the sword darkened into a crimson color. More. Asami came back outside with the telescope she had mentioned and joined back with the others. I got it, she said, as she extended it. Hurry. What do you see? Matsushima asked. Asami looked through the little lens and scanned the area looking for the figure. It was dark and since the red blur faded, It was making it harder for her to find it. However, that blur formed again, and she locked it down and saw that there was someone within it. It's a person that's doing this. Hiro and the others looked at her with a shocked expression. You're kidding? What kind of human can do that? Hiro asked. You know, since these people have been rising from the dead and feasting on the living, this world hasn't been normal since this started. So, this person must be someone sent from hell. It's impossible to be a normal human to do such a thing, Shimada mentioned. Everyone looked back down. Now that I think about it, you could be right, Hiro replied. Wait a second. Everyone turned to face Matsushima. If someone's sent from hell, wouldn't it be helping them? Shimada was quiet now since that it should seem that way, but it wasn't, you're right. Wouldn't Satan want whomever he sends to help destroy the world? Then why would that thing down there be demolishing the walkers? Hiro asked. That question left them in a puzzle situation, so they went back to watching the scene below. Takashi and the others finally approached the scene where the explosion occurred and saw corpses all over the place. Yeah. This is defiantly Naruto's doing, Kaji stated. Where could he have gone? Takashi asked. A beam of red light shot up at the darkened clouds, which drew their attention. He's near them all, Ray mentioned. Let's go. Ha! Kurama was going crazy, as he decapitated several of them with one swing. Kurama's mood changed from having fun slaughtering these creatures to boredom. This isn't even a challenge. Maybe I should just crush this entire world. Okay, Kurama, you've had enough. Shut up, kid. I'm going to continue slaughtering them. You're just about to lose it. I was just playing around, kid. If I were to destroy this world, I would be off task of how to find a way home. Naruto was starting to get annoyed of how the fox was taking too much time in demolishing the walkers and wanted to get back home so he could rest. Reality. Hey you! Kurama looked at the mall's entrance and saw some man standing there with a gun in his hand. Put your hands in the air, demon. Kurama and Naruto's ears perked up at hearing a familiar word, demon? Ha 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 ha. The man began to shake in fear just by hearing the deep demon voice. What do you plan on doing with that puny weapon? Do you honestly think? The man pulled the trigger. As the bullet closed in on Kurama, the red chakra melted it. What? Pathetic. Kurama slowly walked towards him. Stay away. He shouted and fired more shots at the demon. However, like before, all the bullets melted when they were in reach of the red chakra. Kurama stopped his path since the man was now looking at something behind him. He turned around and saw a small building being smashed. His eye locked on another giant, but this giant wasn't like the ones he's been fighting. This one was enormous, standing at 2 stories tall, and the muscles were massively huge that it was just heinous. Kurama's grin formed back on his face. Now that's going to be a challenge. He shouted and charged at the freakishly large giant. The giant slowly walked toward the mall and saw a red blur coming toward it. Kurama jumped up to where he was face to face with the giant. Just as he was about to cut down on it, the giant quickly backhanded him, which sent him flying back to the lot. The man that had shot at Kurama ended up going back inside and rebarricading the doors. Kurama wiped the blood leaking from his mouth and looked at the incoming giant. That was rather rough. Kurama grinned and held out his hand, as a red Rasengan formed in his hand. His grin widened and threw the ball of chakra right at it. In a blink of an eye, the ball of energy hit the giant, but it didn't turn out quite like the fox imagined. The giant was only forced to take a couple steps back. What? Fine, I'll just crush you then, Kurama shouted, as he slammed his hands on the ground. Where the giant currently is, 2 large red chakra hands came out from below the ground it stood on and reached up toward it. The freakishly large giant walker looked down, but the chakra hands made their way up to the giant's head and grabbed it by both sides of it. The giant's arms slowly came up, but then it came to a stop, as the chakra hands squeezed hard on the head. In a matter of seconds, the giant's head was completely smashed, as blood came pouring down. Kurama's chakra arms vanished. Too easy. Asami and the others couldn't believe their very eyes. First, they saw a massive walker that they didn't think was possible for it to become so huge. Now, they saw this so-called demon completely smash it. I can't believe it, Hiro announced. Can't believe what? The giant? Or the demon smashing the giant? Shimada asked. Both, Hiro answered. Asami stared at the demon far below them, but then her eyes locked onto a group of people approaching the lot. Look! She shouted. Matsushima and the others looked around the area and then they all saw what she was calling out. Survivors? No! They need to get away from that demon, Hiro shouted and ran for the door. Asami and the others turned to see Hiro out of their sights. Hiro! They all shouted and ran for the door. What the hell is that? Takashi asked, as they approached the mall parking lot. Kaji and the others looked at the red glow and saw someone within it. I don't know, Ray answered. However, the red glow turned to them, which shocked them all. Siko narrowed her eyes and examined closer. She recognized that it was standing on 2 legs and that it has blonde hair. The clothing was torn up a bit, black sandals, whisker marks, which Siko's body jumped a bit finding out who it was. It's Naruto. Rei and Takashi looked at Siko with shocked expressions. Kaji knew already and was shocked himself to see this look. You! Kurama shouted and walked toward them. What the hell? That didn't sound like Naruto, Rei mentioned. Yeah. It sounds more demonic, Takashi said. The red chakra around Naruto faded, while Siko looked at his eyes to see that they were red now. Takashi and Rei were once again shocked to see that it is Naruto, you worms. Kurama shouted. Naruto? Kaji questioned. Kurama glared at Kaji. No! I'm not Naruto, you pathetic weakling. Huh? Takashi and Rei both questioned. Naruto, what's wrong with you? Siko asked, as she took a step forward. Kurama then glared at the purple-haired beauty. Are you humans this stupid? I've told you that I'm not Naruto. Then who are you? Rei asked. Kurama smiled. He's the QB that's sealed in Naruto. They all looked at Kaji to see that he had answered for the possessed Naruto, which made Kurama's smile widen. Clever. You actually remembered. QB? Takashi and the others questioned. I'm sure Naruto will explain, Kaji answered. Ha! You're all pathetic. You all rely on Naruto to protect you weaklings. You just use him to be your guard. Just like those weaklings back at home used him as a weapon. We're not using him. He's what, your ultimate weapon? Stop acting like you care about him. I've been watching you all, and as Naruto here tries becoming your friends, I see you all wondering why is it he tries. He's just a monster on your planet, so why not act as if we like him and use him? I see that's how you all think, so stop the acting. Kurama shouted, which cut Rei off earlier. Kurama pointed at Rei. You're just a stupid little girl. Your whining drives me nuts. Kurama then pointed at Takashi. You're a little prick that likes to go against things that Naruto does at times. For instance, how you went against him when he kicked that other pathetic group of humans out. He then pointed at Kaji. You're a suck-up. Just because Naruto saved you doesn't mean you can act as if you're in debt to him. Last but not least, he pointed at Siko. And you! Quit trying to move on to him. He doesn't need a girl to act like she's interested in him when she's not and just wants to use him. I'm tired of all of you acting like he's your friend. What is he to you? A smile formed on all their faces. He's our friend, Siko answered. Yeah. Sure, there were times we didn't get along, but there was still times that we goofed around and had a good time, Takashi also answered. Kurama's eyes widened. You're all liars. Which is why Kurama held out his right hand, as a giant red Rasengan formed in it. I will dispose of you all. Siko and the others' eyes widened and were shocked from Kurama's outrage and couldn't find themselves to move. Kurama aimed for the group, but came to a halt. His eyes shut, as the ball of chakra vanished from his hand. Kurama placed his hands on his head. Damn it! Why don't you understand that I'm trying to help you? Kurama yelled and took a couple steps back. No! We agreed that you could just kill those creatures. I'm not going to let you kill these people. You don't understand. I don't want them using you. I'm tired of seeing my host suffering. I'm not suffering. I know what I'm doing. No! Red chakra formed on the ground around Naruto and shot up in the air, as it spun around him like a spiral. Stop it! Siko and the others stepped back a bit, as the red chakra came down and engulfed the blonde. The red chakra then vanished to reveal Naruto standing there back in his normal form. Naruto? Kaji asked. The blonde stood there with his usual bored expression and scratched the back of his head. Sorry about that. Naruto leaned back since they all got up close to him, but then he realized how worried they were and actually smiled. I won't. They all were relieved to see the same Naruto coming back to them, which Rei hugged him tightly. Takashi felt a little hunch of jealousy hit him, but he couldn't find himself to get mad at the blonde. Kaji placed his hand on the blonde's shoulder and chuckled, glad to have you back. Naruto looked at Kaji, but then he felt another hand on his other shoulder. He turned to see Takashi with a smile on his face. Naruto's smile extended a bit. Thanks. Rei backed off, which Takashi and Kaji saw why and also backed off. Naruto looked in front of him to see Siko coming up to him. He saw a small smile on her face. You had us worried, Naruto-san. The blonde scratched the back of his head and chuckled. Sorry. That won't. His eyes then widened to see that she wrapped her arms around him. Never leave your friends like that again, she said. Naruto was still a bit shocked, but then he smiled once again and wrapped his arms around her too. I won't. Takashi and the others stood there with a smile on their face and were glad to have their friend back. Siko unwrapped her arms, which gave the sign to Naruto to unwrap his too. The purple-haired beauty just smiled at him, as did the blonde. Takashi then remembered what he was going to ask. Hey Naruto. Siko and Naruto looked at the teen. Yeah? What was that just now, by the way? Naruto closed his eyes and chuckled. I'll explain on the way home. Takashi smiled since he's finally going to be able to hear the story and turned around deciding to lead once again. Rei, Kaji, and Siko were close behind him. Okay. I mean, I've seen you use some weird tricks, but what we just saw was... A gunshot echoed through the area and they all realized that it wasn't far from them at all. Instead, it sounded as if it was real close. Thunder boomed from above, as the group turned around to see Naruto standing there with wide eyes. But then the blonde fell forward and the others saw that he was shot in the back. Naruto. What if Naruto Rinnegan Highschool of the Dead? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.